I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. First thing I'd like to ask is if there's any visitors or staff to be heard outside of what's going to be presented in a little bit. Okay, there's a sign-in sheet that's going around, so if everybody that is here can go ahead and sign in. Next up, Miss Grunling would like to have a chance to get introduced.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce the new principal of Summit Street School, Suzanne Grunling, and maybe have you say a few words about where you are in the transition process.
Great. I just want to introduce myself. I've only missed a couple people here so far. I haven't met you yet.
Hi, I'm Michael.
Hi, Dave Reister.
Great, and Tim, we met.
We just met.
Yes, great. So I come here from Chittenden East School District. I'm at Camels Hunt Middle School as the assistant principal, and I have been at Chittenden South for 6 years before that as a classroom teacher. I'm really excited to be coming to Chittenden Central to be at Summit. It has been a very inviting and welcoming process, and I've enjoyed sort of the start to the transition activities, working with Mary Hughes. I had an opportunity to go to the Natural Playground Committee last week. I'll be at the PTO meeting tomorrow night, so really just interested in finding out all I can about Summit while Mary is still here, and the administrators in Chittenden Central have been very gracious and welcoming and full of information. So excited to work for you all. Welcome.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Okay. Well, moving right on, then what we'd like to do is, Principal Ryan. There you are. You're over here.
Yes.
Keep moving around. We thought, go ahead. We'd start with your presentation first.
Okay. Well, most of my presentation I'm going to yield to these fine students and teachers that I've asked to come today. We always recognize that this is an opportunity when the board comes to our school to spotlight what's most important, and that's learning and teaching. And so rather than have me write about it or even tell about it, I thought it would be best for you to hear from the students and hear from their teachers some spotlight on excellence here. Across the curriculum, we have represented here today each of our house teams as well as our arts department here. So there's a representative from Endeavor House and Mountaineer House and Synergy House and the arts here this afternoon. But before we get started with that, I'd like to have Sally Madeira, Dr. Madeira, welcome you all here to our newly transformed Learning Center space. Sally and I have worked for a couple of years on talking about how we could redesign this space, and I suppose we're still in just phase one, but we're very excited about what we have here and excited to host you here this afternoon for your meeting. Sally?
I'd just like to welcome everybody here. I've been here a long time, of course, but I decided a few years ago I wanted to do an extreme makeover. I think that scared Dan a little bit, but it was always a great room, and I have a great space, but I just wanted to do something different, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. But I got students to help, gave them a floor plan, I got ideas from them, and just worked from that and came up with some ideas of my own just to make it, I always think of Starbucks and Barnes & Noble and places like that, trying to make it comfy, cozy, and just have a lot of different spaces. We have spaces over there where the kids can play games and create things. We have a cafe back over there. We have 15 new laptops where kids can use them in the cafe or any place in the room. We have iPads that the kids can use. We have new tables, cafe tables and chairs here, which we've all enjoyed. We have a lot of nooks and crannies in the back. This is a space where people throughout the school come. Not only do the kids come in for classes and then in their free time, or time when they want to do research and explore, but a lot of our other staff come in with students to work. So it makes a comfortable spot. We have a little living room with a fireplace up there. We have a reading nook over here. and just other spaces around the room. And I took my office, moved my desk outside, and made what I call the DCF, or Dorothy Canfield Fisher Cafe, just for all adults. It's just sort of a quiet, serene place for when you need 5 minutes, or if we have itinerant teachers who need a space to go sometimes. So people have really enjoyed it. So and yeah, we're still in. I still have more to do. My next project, well, there's tweaking in here that I'm still doing, but then my next project is what was the AV room, and that will be set up for kids being able to go on computers and do podcasting, have a quiet spot, do scanning, and then the larger space in there will be used like for filming, having a green wall and things like that, so we can do programming. So it's exciting. I enjoy coming into work every morning, and the kids seem to really enjoy it too. They kind of watch to see, oh, what did you change? So, and we've changed our technology here. I went from teaching up there to being over here, and it's taken us a while, but I think to do it right, it sometimes takes a while to live with it and figure it all out. But there've been a lot of people helping, so thank you.
Thank you, Sally. As I remind my colleagues on the faculty and staff, I've said over and over, I don't think I've ever been prouder to work with a group of professionals than I've been this year in regards to how each member of this faculty and staff has really invested in professional development. We've taken advantage of every opportunity that was given to us or open to us to help increase our skills, work together collaboratively, improve the climate of this school for everyone in this school community. And a product of that you'll see here tonight, because the excellence of our faculty and staff reflects on the excellence of our students and the opportunities to learn that they have and what they do with those opportunities to learn. So very proud of our faculty and staff and very proud of our students. And I want to thank our students and our teachers for coming here this afternoon to have this opportunity for a spotlight for the board. I don't know who drew straws or who's going first, but go ahead, Mrs. Foley.
We're all flexible.
She is. I've got to go to a meeting over at Summit. I was just going to briefly talk about a school-wide project that we did with all the grade levels, 4th and 5th, and it was doing a self-portrait with our iPads, which we're super lucky to have. And these kiddos know, they lived to tell about it and made some amazing portraits. So just going to show you briefly what they had to do, which was pretty amazing. So we got iPads for everybody. What a feat. We did the basics of use and care, don't eat, drink. First thing they had to do was take a selfie, which was a lot of fun. And after they did that, then we learned about an app called Brushes, which was a really great free app that we had put on all of them. And some of the different steps they had to learn about was how to use a painter's palette, the color palette that they might need, and then the different styles of brushes in various settings. Pretty complicated app. And then layers, which is very much like Adobe Photoshop, that you had to be working on the right layer. And I bet these guys could all agree that if you weren't on the right layer, you lost a whole bunch of work. So we learned that in a hurry. So they had to import their selfie into the Brushes app and then outline it with an opaque black brush. And then we removed the photo, which was a layer, so they could see just that contour line drawing. And these were some of the basic drawings. And then we brought the photo back and used the color palette with this great automatic color selector. If you held your finger down long enough, the color would be found on that color wheel palette and pull it up, and you could find your skin color, your hair color, whatever you needed. And then we started almost like a coloring book, coloring in this contour line drawing with realistic colors. So when they were finished, it was saved to the camera roll, and then we uploaded it. So this was another step in a very great functional way to how to amass all of these portraits and keep them organized. And we put them into Google Drive. So I had a folder on Google Drive for Mrs. Foley's art, and then there were subfolders for each class. They had to learn how to move it from the camera roll into Google Drive, and rename it, which took a little bit of work. And here are just a few. It's funny, I walk down the hall, we have a whole bunch upstairs, like, oh, so-and-so, so-and-so. Oh, that young man's right here now. Do you recognize him?
Got your freckles.
Yeah, you didn't get the freckles. And that's it. iPad portraits. And these guys did a fantastic job. So, Mrs. Alk, I'm going to bring your presentation up. In fact, I'll just close that. And Mr. Gilmet, you'll be ready for yours. And
Thank you, Mrs. Foley.
you are most welcome. My pleasure. Is this it? No, wrong one. Sorry.
You didn't do a picture of Dan, huh?
Yeah. I could have.
I was
could
in
have.
observing the lesson.
He did.
Watching
he did.
her use her picture to model.
Should this be, is it a, oh, it's just a, so we're good. Okay, all right. And here's what they look like. So we eventually printed them off, and they're going to be used in our One World assembly coming up. So, voila.
Hi, I'm Sam Porter, and I'm representing Miss Al's class today. In our class, we incorporated social studies and writing and made a project for Native Americans, a research piece. And Miss Al taught us the importance of Cornell notes because we didn't want to copy off a website or the book we were using because it would be plagiarism. We also learned how to cite images. And here are some of my Cornell notes.
Your notes are neater than mine. Very good.
And then at the end, we used our Cornell notes, and using a Chromebook, we turned them into paragraphs, and this is my finished result.
Didn't come across like we had it earlier.
Yeah.
It's got a little, now it's in Google Docs. All the pages just got messed up. Anyway, so we'll have to fix it again. Why did that happen, Jeff?
I don't know.
So, as you can see, it's a pretty extensive informational piece of writing, but all that came back from their notes in their own words, and if they cited anything, quoted anything, they knew how to do that, and cite their, well, do a caption, cite their image from where they found that. They had chapter headings and subheadings, and he included different text structures, such as earlier here was a common recipe you had there, Sam?
Yeah, for the venison stew.
Recipe, so that was a different text structure. Here you see he's cited and the recipe and where he found it. They had to do a table of contents, a bibliography, and I'm sorry that this got a little scrambled since we left the classroom, but.
I bet I know what it is. That's Firefox, not Chrome.
Oh, okay, Firefox. So Firefox messed it up a little, but that's Sam's report. Good job, Sam.
That was very good.
Part of what we're working on, as Sam mentioned, it's a humanities approach, so it's literacy with social studies. And the Common Core standards are going to require writing and literacy across the content areas. So, as I said, our professional development is leading us to this kind of work and these kind of integrated learning experiences for our students.
All right, so I'm Mr. Gilmet. I teach 4th and 5th grade math, science, and social studies here. And we did a project this year with Miss Foley as an arts integration project. And so I taught about 6 weeks on earth layers and plate tectonics, which is it's a pretty difficult concept. Plate tectonics in itself is pretty difficult for kids in 5th grade to grasp and to try to understand that, number one, how big the earth really is and how the plates are broken up and why. So we, through a bunch of different software and programs and modeling, we did some research on the plates, and then Ms. Foley came to me and she had an idea to use a program to create common craft videos. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it's a guy, he moves like pictures across a white screen and he talks and explains different concepts. And so we figured we'd try it with the students using a free program. So we took an extra art period with Ms. Foley 1 day a week during our science time, and we created storyboards. They did their artwork there, and there was some more research done too, using iPads and making sure that their pictures and their diagrams were correct and their information was correct as well. And then the technology part, Mr. Davidson and Ms. Foley took kids from our science class and brought them down into groups, and they used this video program, which they did still images, and then from there they either weave them into a video portion, or you'll see in their videos that their hand movements are still images of coming through, and it makes it look like everything flows together on video, but it's really just still images we've woven together. So I have Patrick and Rachel here today to present one of their projects that they did, and I'm going to let them talk about that. One of my other students went home, I think he forgot, so I'll just click on his video afterwards to show that. So go ahead, Rachel and Patrick. Yeah. Do you want to talk about your project first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, like Mr. G said, it was a multi-step project. I liked working in groups, and we just kind of, it took a while. We started in the art room and kind of worked our way up to Mr. Davidson's office so we could create these video technology videos.
What was your favorite part?
It was videotaping.
All right, we'll show you one here.
Tsunamis by Ashton, Rachel, and Patrick. I hope you enjoy our presentation. A tsunami is a huge wave that is caused by earthquakes when huge amounts of water is displaced. Surf's up! Transform plate boundaries and convergent plate boundaries create tsunamis. Here is an example of a transform plate boundary creating a tsunami. And here is an example of a convergent plate boundary creating a tsunami. As the tsunami gets closer to land, the water gets shallower and the tsunami gets bigger because it's pulling the water in. In 2011, a huge earthquake in Japan caused a tsunami. It was a large release in pressure from a convergent plate boundary that caused the chain reaction. As you can see, a tsunami can cause serious damage, so if you live anywhere near the ocean, be prepared. Thanks for watching. So, kind of, as you can see, I was narrating Rachel as we did different scenes. She would move the pictures in and out under the screen, and it was pretty hard because you had to have them perfectly aligned so that it wasn't crooked or too high or too low on the screen. And then another student, Ashton, couldn't be here today, but he was using the computer to take pictures and start the video and stop. And we also had another cool little piece where nobody was sliding in and out pictures. It's called stop motion animation, where you take different things and you can move them across the screen by just taking a picture and then moving it slightly, and then taking a picture and moving it slightly, so it looks as if it's moving during the video, and you can still be talking. You can work your voice into it. So that was I really enjoyed doing that project because we got to work in groups and really small groups and kind of figure out what was best for everyone else.
Awesome. It was great for me too because I used it as an assessment piece. You know, the hardest part for students sometimes is being able to explain the concept back to you, and so I used this piece as one of my assessment pieces as well. So I'll just show you one more quick one. It's only about a minute. And this was the other students that couldn't be here. One of them was on a field trip with the after-school program, and she kind of
Earthquakes by Cindy, Patrick, and Anaya. Earthquakes start when two plates come together and collide, or when two plates move apart, sort of like a stick snapping, because if two plates collide, they push until pressure builds and snaps. When this happens, this could trigger tsunamis and volcanoes. When a plate snaps under a sea or on seafloor, it flings up water, which can cause a tsunami. Also, when an inactive volcano is shaken, it can turn into an active volcano. Earthquakes happen at divergent plate boundaries, which are the plates that move apart. So when moved, or build up pressure until snapping, they can cause earthquakes. The biggest earthquake ever recorded was in Chile, and was 9.5 on the Richter scales. Narrated by Anaya and Patrick. Title page and ending by Cindy. Taping by Patrick and Anaya. Drawings by Patrick and Cindy. Storyboard written by all. Camerawoman, Cindy. Writing credits by Anaya. The end! Thanks for watching.
That one had a lot of stop motion.
Yeah, so you could see in that one there was a lot of the stop motion, like the seismograph with that piece coming out. Yeah. Really looked neat. So. And
Mr. G kind of also wanted us to like add a little humor to it, so it wasn't just us explaining this back to him as if we were taking it off just notes that somebody else had written. We had to add a little voice, a little life.
That's right.
Good job.
Mr. Kinney?
Hi, I'm Mike Kenny. I'm a fifth grade teacher here in Synergy. I am actually not presenting. Kagan is presenting. Kagan, you want to put your pictures right here? If you want, I can do the pictures. I'm kind of stand up here.
Hi, my name is Katie Murphy. I'm from Mr. Kenny and Ms. Lumley's class in Team Synergy. In April, we were challenged by Mr. Kenny to build an ice box to help insulate the ice cube that was put inside of it. This is my Model A. I stuffed it with cotton balls, and I had an egg carton inside of it with lined with tin foil where my ice cube sat, but it wasn't very successful because it sat in melt water the entire time, and the heat got in by the cracks inside. We also had to do a drawing of it. This is my drawing, Model A. And then like a week later, we were able to look at our classmates' results of Model A, build Model B. This is my Model B. I took a whole sock, and wrapped it 3 times around the jar, and I put bread around it just to help insulate it. And then the ice cube sat inside the sock, and the melt water just absorbed into it. And also, since I used a glass jar, I didn't have to open it to look through my ice cubes. I just could see through the glass, and I had a rubber seal to make sure that it was airtight and that no hot heat could get into it to melt the ice cube. And then along with everything else, we had to write a report about what we did and why we think it's successful. this is my Model B, and then we had to draw it again. This is my drawing for Model B. So that's pretty much it.
Kagan, how did you know to use wool and why did you use bread?
Well, we tested them in class, and while we were testing ours, Mr. Kenny tested just plain old household items with plastic wrap over the top, but a corner was out so he could get in. And wool and bread lasted the longest for our test results, and so I figured I could put them together and it will last longer than Model B. Model A lasted about an hour and a half, and Model B for me lasted 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
So those are our presentations here. A little spotlight on teaching and learning, and as you can see, a lot of cross-curriculum, great use of technology. We're really fortunate. You've heard his name mentioned a couple of times, but Mr. Davidson, which we're very appreciative of the fact that we'll be seeing more of Mr. Davidson here and at Summit next year with his new created position. But he is most valuable in terms of advancing the transformative use of technology here in the school. So we're very appreciative, and the students and the teachers are really benefiting from that support and that teamwork.
Integration with physical is also invaluable as well. She embraces technology and tries anything. And we just dive in with her, and that's been a fabulous experience for kids as well.
Yes. Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
In Fleming School Action Plan will frame a lot of the work that we have been doing and will continue to do, with some new additions. Certainly you're all going to hear more about MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support. You also know that the district's invested in a data system, which is very important for us to be able to collect data and be able to analyze how we're doing and where we're going and what changes we need to make. So we're really looking forward to that. We know that MTSS is very comprehensive. It sort of covers the map of what we're working on. And so we're looking forward to learning more about that, and that is part of our action plan. You'll see it integrated in there as my colleagues across the district is also are referencing MTSS. So it's not a change, because many of the things that are framed by MTSS we're already doing, and we feel that we're really positioned well as a school and as a district to enter into that work because of such things as the investment in the data system, because of the work that we've done in special education and support services, because of the work. You know, you didn't see that clearly, but as I said to begin with, they were representing each of our house teams here in the way that we've constructed the work that we do together. It's more collaborative. Teachers are working more together, and our students are getting to know each other and having more opportunities to work together and learn together. So those are all good things, and they're all framed under the MTSS plan.
quick question. So what's MTSS stand for?
Multi-tiered systems of support.
Okay, and is that the name of the data system?
No.
No.
Okay, so
Admin
what is it?
Inform is the name of the data system, and multi-tiered system of support is a field guide that has come out, and there's legislation that's going to require all of us to implement this as a framework for the work. As Dan said, it's not just, it provides a context for it all, so people see where it fits, where the work fits together. So when Michael talks later about the CCSU board update and the Leaders at Work annual work plan, that task team has been talking about how we frame that conversation and training around MTSS, so when board members start to hear about it, they have a context for what it looks like and what it means.
Right.
So that's coming your way soon.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for getting the kids out here to do some presentations. That's always, for me, one of the best parts of doing the meeting in the schools, actually, is getting a chance to see how, how they're using the technology, and just they get a chance to present in front of another group, which is kind of neat.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that.
You know, I think the great idea is we do a budget, and it's black and white, and we're looking at technology and the computers and what we're putting in, and to see something like this, it brings home to me how valuable what we did during budget. So, but it helps.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking the same thing, looking out here at Grant and Amy, Judy. It's a total team effort here, what our students are representing. Wouldn't happen unless there was a lot of collaboration and working together, and Grant putting together excellent budget plans, and working with the principals to build those budgets, and the professional development that I spoke of having such pride in, that happens because of Amy's work with us and helping us make those connections for quality professional development, and helping to provide training for our teachers in the Common Core, and getting ready for SBAC, and the curriculum that we're trying to change, and the new report cards that just came out this fall, that represent the Common Core, that reflect the Common Core, and the teachers work on making trimester benchmarks for those report cards, and having assessments that back up their judgments on reporting on those report cards. It all happens because of that leadership and that collaboration. And so I think, we can tell about it, we can show our kneecap scores, but the real proof of the pudding is what you saw here today. And, it's not only the products that they share, but their presence to be able to stand up in front of a board and present proudly what they've worked on and what they've learned, I think is also most impressive. So thanks for giving them the opportunity, and us the opportunity to host you here today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Well, moving on a little bit, continuing with some principals' reports. Jen will tell us about some of the other schools.
Okay. I'll start with ADL. Amanda Eldridge, who's one of the social studies teachers there, embarked on a service learning and citizenship project for the students. She challenged them to connect with adult mentors and at the same time give back to the community in some way. And a lot of visible projects came out of this, but one that was really up there was the American Red Cross blood drive that they hosted last month. They had so many donors drop in, they actually had to turn some people away. I think what impressed me even more was that in this project alone, this was only 4 students that were working on this one. And it goes to show when you give these children creative opportunities, what they can do with them. It's quite impressive.
They also had their annual music selection. Fiddler on the Roof was performed last month. There was over 50 students involved in that. Lots of help from parents, and a special thanks to Director Liz LaRoe, who comes a long way to help every year with this. They also had their Empty Bowls night. They raised over $1,000 for the Heavenly Pantry. I know a lot is going on in the schools in the next month, so I'm just going to cite some of the public events, and then you can go check out on the website other ones that you're interested in. They're going to have their 6th grade information night Thursday, the 15th at 6:30. Their spring concert is Thursday, May 22nd at 7. The Memorial Day Assembly is Friday, May 23rd at 8 a.m. And they're going to be having a barbecue lunch that day as well, 11 to 12:30, and they are looking for volunteers for that. Their final assembly will be Tuesday, June 17th at 8 a.m. Hiawatha, the children, families, and staff just said a farewell to the UVM student teachers and interns, a wonderful group of people, and they've been working with UVM in a partnership the last few years doing this, and it's been really rewarding for everybody involved. They will have their spring conferences Monday, May 19th. These are student-led conferences, and Principal Bochansky wanted to extend an invitation as well to their volunteer thank you, which is this Friday. There'll be a buffet breakfast from 8 to 8:30, and that will be in the main lobby, and then following that will be the thank you assembly from 8:30 to 9. Summit Street School just celebrated Arbor Day. This is the 2nd year that they celebrated this. The PTO purchased the tree, and Nick Myers and Rachel and Rich Boyers coordinated by selecting, delivering, and planting the tree after a 3rd grade presentation. And close to $4,000 was raised by the Natural Playground from the funds collected at the silent and live auction held at the Darkroom Gallery. Tim and his wife Stephanie, along with Gracie Pierce Engel, spearheaded this amazing event, so way to go, that was great. They are also having their student-led conferences on the 19th. A few upcoming events for them is the PTO, their final meeting is tomorrow, and this is going to feature the election of officers. Tuesday, May 30th is the Natural Playground meeting at 6:30. Their Memorial Day Assembly will be Thursday, May 22nd at 8:15, which will feature Miss Mahoney's kindergarten class. And Wednesday, May 28th is kindergarten registration day. Principal Hughes did want the board to know about a 3rd grader who secured some signatures from most of his classmates requesting that they host a science fair this spring. And he presented the petition to her. She agreed with it, and there's a group of 10 parents who are working closely with any 3rd grader that wants to get involved. So they will be having their science fair June 3rd from 2 to 3, and again that evening from 5:30 to 7:30, which I thought was great. And those are the principal reports.
Thank you. Marla?
I
Did you have a couple
passed
things?
out
Oh, thank you.
on Essex Junction Recs and Parks, the advisory council meeting, the last one I attended. Harlan Smith, who is the head of grounds and maintenance, put together what you see in front of you, and he's included pictures of the damage from the spring, and you can see how much and how extensive it was. I thought it was a great way to show us before and after pictures, you know, or before when there's damage and then after. I thought that was a great way for maintenance to do that. Also, the Rec Advisory Council, just to give this board a heads up, they are talking about doing, instead of monthly meetings, going to bi-monthly. Most of the work that Brad has needed the help with the advisory council, it is slowing off a little bit, so they feel that they can better use that time from meetings to put it into programs. And the purpose statement, which outlines that, the purpose statement, we'll be working on and changing that. So that's pretty much it.
Great.
Isn't it amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Just that Harlan putting that together, and then he's got a piece on there. I guess the other thing I should say is they're trying to think of ways that they can use the park in the winter. So one of his question marks is an ice rink. But like he said, he doesn't want to be out there at 1 or 2 in the morning with a hose. So they're trying to think of things that we can utilize the park for during winter months. So if you've got any ideas, Brad would, I'm sure, entertain them all.
Thank you. Now we just need to hear a few words from some of the task teams. Since our last meeting, did communications meet?
Nope. I think the next one's actually tomorrow.
Okay,
Yep.
that's what I thought. It was really, really soon, so there isn't probably a whole lot to report out on communications. Policy?
It got canceled because
You guys have been bumped a few times for negotiations,
Yeah.
right?
So the next one is May 21st.
The 21st?
Yeah.
Okay. And negotiations?
Negotiations, the board council met and have extended the authority of the small group to continue with negotiations. The next 2 small group negotiations are scheduled for June 3rd and June 11th. And then completion of the June 11th date, the board council will be scheduled to meet again, to be determined.
Okay. How are we positioning ourselves to being finished before the end of the current contract?
We'll see how those meetings go.
We're positioned. We're positioned.
Well, I guess what I mean is,
I think we could say that, you know, a lot of stuff was already closed by the small group, so there's some of the key items still remain.
Right.
But I think we gave, for both contracts, we gave, the
guidance.
We gave the guidance for what parameters we think are, good, what box to work in. So we have that, kind of what we worked through, like the open items, and I think we kind of gave those parameters. So if the small teams can come to some agreement, it could work.
Right.
So we'll see what happens with that, and then we'll work those parameters on remaining items, say, if it's still open after that.
Sure.
Right. Thanks for mentioning also the support staff has approached us too, and so we're creating a unified agreement with the teachers. We're also unifying the support staff agreement. So we'll go from currently 5 different master agreements to 2, which will be a huge step forward.
Great. And then leaders at work.
Want me to report on that?
Yeah, well,
you're on the same committee with me.
Well, it kind of leads into the executive.
The Leaders at Work Committee, we've met once since our last board meeting, and what we were discussing were the annual goals, the annual work plan, and what went from that was supposed to go back to the executive committee, and the executive committee is Mike, the chair of the Prudential committee, Jack, the chair of the Union 46 board, and Mark, the chair of the Westford board. And at this point, I don't know if they've met, but they were to meet, and then they're going to bring back to the Leaders at Work, which that meeting's going to happen either this week, the 14th or the 15th. And we were going to set dates on the goals, deadlines, and the organizations or the individuals responsible for meeting the goals.
And to follow that up, the executive committee has not met. And at this point, I don't believe we're going to meet until basically the Leaders at Work meeting.
Yeah.
Because the 3 of us are on that committee, and we will finish up what we have to get done that evening for the annual work plan and for the superintendent evaluation. And that's where it's at. There's still.
And it's SU wide.
Yes.
That's really more the work plan.
Yeah, it's at
whole
the
SU for next year's. What
Correct,
we're talking
correct.
about, like developing.
Yeah, I think we basically have come up with kind of the plan of how things will flow in terms of from one year to the next and the overlapping of the process. So in other words, you have the year where the evaluation is occurring, but near the tail end of that, you're also starting the process for the next year's evaluation. So that particular process has kind of been worked out. However, the actual work and the evaluation piece is still to be hammered out by the group.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is it's just us still trying to really trying to figure out what we want. I mean, it hasn't crystallized for us yet, and we're still we're working through that process, and it's not been easy. It's a big picture kind of a thing, and it's still we're working through it, and with the help of the folks on the Leaders at Work, it's definitely helping me out to come up with this plan with the work plan.
One of the things the committee decided at the last meeting was to keep it to one page. So they've color coded it from the goals from this current year and put next year's plan, and they were able to say this goal was accomplished, this goal is going to carry over to a next layer of work, and added this needs to be a new goal added to it. So it's a color-coded copy, and I think it's really a nice format for you to follow. It will then go, tomorrow night at the communications task team will be to look under the communications sections of what Leaders of Work have thought through so far, and to start to flesh out more from that skeleton of what your meetings will be and your focus of your work. And that'll be the true of policy and all the other task teams that are part of that annual work plan, because it's all 16 board members working through task teams to accomplish some of these goals with the superintendent. So for example, in policy this year, the work was done on health and wellness, and we'll see where we landed there with the development of procedures. And so each topic area had specific targets to accomplish. So what was accomplished or what needs to be carried over will be identified. An update to the annual work plan for this year was that I received a memo from the Agency of Education that provided a 2-week window, and I think when Linda Waite-Simpson arrives, she'll probably speak to the fact that the governance bill, H883 in the House, and then the work the Senate did to talk about the structure and governance of education in their miscellaneous education bill. None of that passed, and the session's ended. So what will remain in effect then is Act 153 and 56. And so there was a 2-week window where districts have had an opportunity, supervisory unions, to present any waivers. So I have sent in the waiver request from our previous attempt to use the policy and procedures that we developed as far as the transfer of special education teachers to the supervisory union. So that was submitted just at the end of last week.
Okay.
And we're supposed to know by mid-June if that gets accepted. If it's not accepted, then bargaining will need to resume so that we can talk about creating a negotiated agreement to meet the spirit and intent of Act 153. So more to come. We'll be talking about this a lot, I'm sure, in the weeks ahead.
Okay. Yeah, and what to get back to what I talking about the annual work plan, and that will be, we're going to have that hammered out by on Thursday's meeting is the next Leaders at Work is on the 15th,
Mm-hmm.
because at the next CCSU meeting we need to present that as what we're going to use for the work plan to the SU.
So it's a combination of board work and administration work?
Mm-hmm.
But not all the board work.
It's about the common board work, and the board work that's
Okay.
in common are your task team work.
Right.
So the framework is policy, communications, negotiations, every place where there's a task team.
Okay. Okay, because if this is used for evaluation, then that gets confusing, because that's self-evaluation plus superintendent evaluation, right?
Well, then what we do is we take the annual work plan, and to that, the next step that the committee will be working on tomorrow or Thursday night is to take the superintendent's evaluation tool, and they'll cross-reference it. So they'll look at the goal in one particular area.
Okay, so
and
that's
then they
how it gets in there.
Yes.
reference the standards-based
Yeah.
superintendent's evaluation tool.
Okay.
But there's still discussion about it and how that's
Right.
going to fit together.
Right. Right. That's what's being worked
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Right. No, I got it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better. That's helpful. I understand better now.
I think what is hard is trying to keep it to one page, because we could set so many goals that they're unattainable and be sending everybody out in different directions. But what I find I think this legislation piece has bothered me because a decision wasn't made, and we're caught with Act 153, 156. We're caught with that act that we have to satisfy. I was hoping the legislation piece would have happened by now, so we would know if we had to go for the waiver or if we were headed towards a unified district.
Yes. So there's just a lot of unknowns
But it wasn't going
the
to
last
force
time.
unified districts, was it?
It was going to create expanded K through 12 districts across Vermont. So
It wasn't going to force anybody to go into any of them.
no,
It was
going to
providing
be
the framework to do it, and
Yes.
then you could
Right.
figure out.
it's going to be voluntary.
It was voluntary, so it
Mhm.
wasn't gonna force anything anyway.
No, but it could have prevented the section of 153 that required us to move teachers to an SU environment.
Because we would do it in some new thing.
Right. Some other concept. Yeah.
It'd be a
As
new
things played together.
regional
Right.
SU or
Canceled something else
whatever
out.
you called it. I don't know what it was
There
called.
wouldn't be a supervisory union anymore.
Right.
It'd be an expanded pre-K-12 school district.
District. Right.
That's the
Right.
difference.
Right. It's because
With
it would
one
change.
board. It would change the governance
we
structure.
like went into one.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. But, as Marla said, that didn't happen, and so we're right on getting that waiver in.
Right.
So I think that was pretty timely, and we'll see what the outcome will be of that, and it'll frame. So that's part of the annual work plan, is that some of these decisions don't always happen in our nice linear model of, an annual work plan. So we'll be massaging that section of the annual work plan based on
Right.
the outcome of both our waiver, now that we know what the legislative decision is on it. It doesn't prevent us, though. It's not legislated, but it doesn't prevent us from still talking about, and I think when Representative Linda Waite Simpson comes tonight, continuing to think about what makes sense for this community
Right.
and the communities we serve. So although it might not be a legislative voluntary requirement, it still may be an opportunity to think about how to form a RED, which is in Act 153, and brush up a little bit on what those procedures are. It would probably be beneficial at the next SU meeting to have a conversation about it. I know Representative Simpson is going to attend the next U46 board meeting as well. So we'll have plenty of opportunity to hear the perspective, because it doesn't negate the fact that we still need to think through the sustainability and high tax rates that our communities are enduring, and if there's any way to be any more efficient and effective in our service delivery of education. So those conversations, I think, are still on the table locally.
Well, then that leads us to Planning Day. What do we want to do?
I know you want to outline the day, or do you want ideas of what we need to discuss?
Let's start with the things we need to discuss.
Okay. One is we need to discuss preschool. The rec department, one classroom moving to Park Street and one over at the rec department, and my understanding is Christine over there with the preschool program, I think, has a vision that might be coming forward of how they envision Park Street being used. And so I think on planning day, I suspect you would want Brad there, and Grant, and Paul, and Aaron.
That's really helpful, Marla. If there's any topic that you want administration at, knowing that sooner, because it's a July 11th.
Because it'll involve Aaron,
date.
it'll involve Grant with budgeting or the potential. And it's a conversation we know needs to happen, and as in the director's report and what Brad told us at the rec department meeting, is there's, I think, only a couple slots open in preschool.
Mm-hmm.
We've increased the slots, there's only a couple open.
Right.
So, and on that topic is also, if we do talk about, or if Linda feels that this unified district is going to happen or is still being talked about next year, we need to talk about where the rec department is going to reside.
Right.
Can we still hold the rec department under the school district? Is it something that needs to go back to the village in the future? Is it something the town and the village need to talk about doing a park district that Jeff Carr brought up?
Wasn't this all resolved last year?
This is a little different because of this legislative, how they're talking about doing unified districts. If the state, what we need to be on top of is if the legislators, if they move forward with unifying these districts, I'm not sure that we'll be able to keep the rec department. That's something that we need to find out, and we need to be working, I think, in advance. Because there is a cost and there's work to separate the rec from the school district.
But it just becomes one of the issues about whatever we decide to go into.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
It's just like, I mean, there's lots of other issues. How to merge down to one superintendent, how
Right.
to, I mean, that's just one small thing, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I mean, it's very relevant for our board,
Right.
of course.
Right.
But like,
Mm-hmm.
to shove 2 SUs and 5 districts together is going to be just a mountain of things, and that's just going to be like one of the items.
Right.
But
right?
if you think
I mean,
our
we're like so
our
far
pieces-
away from that, aren't we? Well, I don't think we need to talk about this summer.
I don't know if it's
It's voluntary, and that didn't pass. So that means, you know, what potentially would pass next time is not, maybe probably still voluntary. So then it's voluntary. So then that makes it multiple years away anyway, because you'd have to figure out, do we want to do it? Does someone else want to do it, say Essex Town or whatever? It's multiple years, isn't it? Realistic timetable.
Realistically,
So-
but anytime you talk about programs like that and the town and the village and everything that's involved, it's very political. It takes people time to understand it, and you're looking at probably 2 to 3 years to work on making it happen. You know, you'd want to know what your budgeting is going to entail, what's Grant going to have to come up with. It's the start of a conversation, Tim, and I think it this way at least we're ahead and we're not just caught and forced into something, because we might decide that we want to advocate to legislature that we want to keep it the way it is, you know. So it's a good annual day. I think it's a topic that we need to talk about on planning day.
I guess I would just put one before it is, but what if we don't want to do it? It's voluntary, right? So it seems like the topic which should come before it is, what would we want to be in a bigger district first? If we say no, then we shouldn't talk about any details about how to make it happen.
And wouldn't that be a community conversation?
That's right.
Well, right, like,
So,
I mean,
yeah.
but
I
we
agree
got to start
with
our
you.
conversation and then say, well, geez, maybe we better go find out more what the constituents want,
Right.
right? And then we would, after that, then we would talk about. I'm just trying to like organize it in my mind. Like I wouldn't want to talk about things if that's not the direction we want to go in. I mean, it's just an example of a thing. There's like 15 other things that we could potentially talk about as well. But that just, to me, is just an example of one. You know, trying to think about it more generally is like, but what comes first is, what would we actually be interested in doing? We meet the criteria for the new district already, the way we are. So I don't see it, the way I understand it is, I don't see it targeted to us. We're already consolidated for that criteria.
I think that there's, you know, we probably should take a look at the law under Act 153 and 56. I think we should take a look at the expanded districts. I think we should take a look at our current functioning. Just get really knowledgeable about how we currently are doing business and how doing business would look differently.
Right.
And would there be any advantages?
Right. What would the advantages be?
Right.
Pros
So
and cons
educating
about
yourselves,
the
educating
whole-
yourselves about those pieces, you know,
Well,
so
that we
that
could-
then you could have engage the community with, this is what we think we know, and be able to speak knowledgeably about whatever efficiencies could be gained, and if there's any advantages for kids and learning. I think those are the big two questions that you...
Well, I agree that it's a conversation to be had, but I agree with Tim that I don't think this is the place for that conversation. I think it needs to be at a public meeting. This is for us to plan our year and kind of what we want to see. So the preschool conversation makes sense, and they're looking to possibly have that second classroom. That absolutely makes sense to have. But I think we need to plan what this board wants to do for the next year, and since it is a kind of private meeting, I think we need to keep.
I think the planning day, though, is, I think the education of the board members needs to happen, because if we don't get the waiver for Act 153, with the teachers having to be moved to a CCSU, all under CCSU umbrella, don't forget the CCSU budgets are not voted on by the public. So I think we need some education. I think planning day is a perfect time for that scenario. And we've already, Armando did deny us the Act 153 waiver. So I'll be curious how the new education secretary does.
Right.
Me too.
Okay.
So
Yes.
my big topics would be self-evaluation and, you know, whether we would, I don't know what you guys have been doing over the last few years. On U46, we did the self-eval. VSBA has one. I mean, someone else might have another one. I don't know. And then, you know, went through it because that's a, you know, that's a way to, I mean, it's a way to say, I mean, that's what, to me, that's what the planning day is. You know, we're doing all of this sort of work all through the, you know, year meetings, and then this summer meeting is kind of like, okay, step back. How did we do? What was our job? What did we think our job was? How did we do our job? If that's what we thought it was. What did we agree on in the beginning of the year our job was to do? And then how did we do on that? Right? And then, okay, then thinking about, I think the projecting from that happens also at that meeting. Well, how does that go? What do we want to do during our meetings of the next year? What did we like about how our meetings were, what we covered? What did we not think we should cover anymore? Or what should we change? How should we adjust based on what was getting our job done or what was not getting our job done, the way we talk about it?
So Tim's right in the fact that U46 does complete an annual board self-evaluation survey and have actually, I think they've done it for 5 years now consecutively, and they're able to track their growth in different areas. That evaluation tool, their planning day is June 18th. So in their set of orgs going out today, the board survey is attached to it. We were able to put it into a Survey Monkey, so you can just do it right online, and we'll have it all collated for you, and then you can make sense of it during your planning day if that's the wish or the will of the board to complete a survey evaluation. It would provide this board with some baseline data because you haven't typically done this.
Yeah, we haven't done one. We did one the first couple of years I was on the board, I thought.
Last year we didn't do one. It was, I think it was with Mike giving his notice that he was retiring. I think everything, all the goals, everything were a little bit on a back burner. Our goals had to change. So, but I remember us doing the self-eval.
So if you want to do it for July 11th, which is your planning day, I can include the link to the survey in your June org notes. And it doesn't take
just
that long.
Just send it out any time, really.
Or any time.
Fill it out any time.
Is it a set of, are the questions already set? I mean, we wouldn't need to alter anything for specific to this group?
Mike and I created it based on the VSBA survey.
Okay.
So
pretty standard.
it is a pretty standard
then
survey.
Let's do that.
Right. And then it's like you can write comments in there.
Right.
I don't remember how you wrote comments, but like,
strengths?
yeah, as you write the comments and then we like merge them together, that's what talks about the specifics of what a particular board was working on.
Right.
I think, because you get it out of each question, basically, or certain ones more than others, maybe.
So do you want that randomly, or do you want it with your June orgs, which is coming up early? June orgs.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can have a preference sooner, better than later, but the June orgs are pretty soon.
Yeah.
I guess they are, aren't they?
You're talking about when to give us the survey?
Yeah.
Right.
Because we want it done by planning day.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Before planning day, so you have time to have it collated, the results, and.
Yeah, the only thing is I remember working on it before the planning meeting one time, but I don't know what's the current experience? Are they able to just do the thing and then have it collated and then come to planning day and really go through it? Because I remember there's like 30 questions.
Yeah, the current experience is Jack Balendorf, as the chair, has the results sent to him by June 6th, and their planning day, as I said, is the 18th. So he takes that period, that window, he actually puts together a PowerPoint where he compares his years, shows where there's growth, areas of growth, areas where that are low, so you can talk about those pieces.
Yeah.
And he has it all mapped out, and I'm sure he would be happy to share his PowerPoint as far as how he creates the analysis and frames conversation. So that would be something that when the executive committee meets, you may have a chance to talk with him about using his format.
Okay.
I do find it to be a very helpful tool. And I think it helps you have really good conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I won't be able to answer a
Right.
lot of, except for like from a few meetings, or just it'll be more like impressions or whatever.
Right.
But I think for me, it will be good, because then that's the planning. That's with the board. It's like, okay, we're going to get to agreement. We're going to get to consensus on, you know, how are we going to do our job over, you know, in the next year. And that way we're all clear, you know, because sometimes, I might have ideas of what it's supposed to be, but it's not clear that that's what we've all agreed on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because coming in new, it's already been happening, right?
Yeah. I'll give you a chance
just
to
simply for that perspective. 'Cause that's
collaborate and calibrate.
Right.
Thinking of that, is it possible to send out, I know there were minutes from the annual planning day, but I'm not sure the minutes were as precise. Did we do a document from that planning day? Did Charlie? I think we took just exactly from the minutes. So it might be a refresher to send us at the same time.
Last
year's planning day minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great for me to review. I didn't get back that. I only went back through like all the year's meetings.
Okay.
I didn't go back to the summer.
I know we wanted to talk about communications, or how we're getting them, and the email and the issues we've had. So maybe it's a conversation we can have tomorrow at communications, decide if we want to go forward to add it to the planning day. I think we might be at a point where we say, is this email working? If it's not, then let's stop using it, or if it is, let's get everybody involved. Because I know Ben had talked about possibly coming to the planning day to walk people through
Using the board site.
Yeah. So that's something that we could possibly talk about.
That'd be an additional person. to make
I love
sure
it.
with that. Yeah.
Love it already.
I'll definitely find it easier to find things. Anything else for planning day?
Is there anything
I
jumping
mean,
out from the leadership team that the board?
Oh, the MTSS would be a good opportunity for you to have a presentation on the framework.
Because I
Yep.
think it's the end of June when we go over all the principals' plans or the school
Right.
plans.
Right.
So I'm just
The action
wondering if
plan?
there's
Yeah.
any
Yep.
one thing that stands out that they need the board to be working on or considering.
So I got another one.
Sure.
That I think this could come out of the survey. This could come out of the survey, out of the self-assessment. But you know, kind of basically already thinking about it is, it's all about figuring out where we fit into the SU structure. So, you know, our board has 4 schools, you know, 4 principals, right? But the principals report to the superintendent. And so, you know, if we think about our job of the parts of like ensuring that the schools are well run, you know, then that's clearly one of the key, you know, the supervision and evaluation of the principals is clearly one of the key topics. But like, we're like a layer down from the SU. This is like a layer down from the SU level, where the SU board's job is to, and the executive committee is supervising and evaluating the superintendent. But then it transitions into the administration structure of the school, because teachers are evaluated by the principals evaluated by the superintendent, right? So how does our board fit in to understanding the way it's happening with our 4 schools, because that's all our focus is. We're not the SU.
Understanding the principal's evaluation,
Well-
leadership evaluation, or
well-
teacher evaluation.
The whole thing. But, where do we fit in? How do we make sure of that? How do we know the right information? How do we know we have the right information? I think that's kind of what we would discuss, right? Is how have we been doing it?
Mm-hmm.
What do we know? How's it been working today? Where are we? And how do we think that part should work?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So the
it
tools-
might be embedded in some of the.
It's actually in the work plan.
In the work plan already, but then how does that come back to us, our board, about our schools versus the other boards at their school? Okay, this could be it could be the way it comes to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, that's our particular interest, is.
Are you staying focused on leadership, or are you wanting teachers too?
I think it's starting at the high level, and if we can resolve the top ones, then we could work down to the other ones. Just so people have an idea, right? It could sit, if it's, to talk. Okay, if it's Judy's job to evaluate the principals, hey, I don't want to do it, right? Like that's not my job. I don't want to do the evaluation. But maybe what it is, it's like a report about it. So we have the report which says, all these evaluations were done. Here's what the results are. It's a summary of everything. Yep, and then that's telling us, yep, it's being well done. Good. I don't know. I think that's to figure out what is it that is like the evidence for us that we're verifying that the schools are well run.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to do the running.
Right.
But this is what I'm struggling with is making sure we're figuring out what is it at our board, this board's level for our 4 schools, because it's in context of the bigger supervisory union with other boards and other schools and a superintendent overseeing all of it.
Right. So the board's job is comes in through contract renewals. So a recommendation would be 4 evaluations were completed, 4 contracts are being recommended for renewal, and probably some, it's personnel information, so it's nothing that gets shared as far as anybody's individual performance.
Right, yeah. So, how does it work
Right.
in the terms of...
And if there's a problem
can
anywhere, then you would have an executive session, and it would come through under a performance, under a contract issue.
Right.
Personnel contract issue. So that's how concerns would come to any board member's attention about performance, just like it does for teachers. If there's a performance issue. At which time I'll say that we'll have a brand new principal starting this year, first time being a principal, and Marla was pretty astute at the Leaders at Work meeting to create that as a focus area to ensure there was mentoring and supports in place for the new principal to be successful. So along the way, evidence of that would be shared during, for example, planning day and the transition planning work that's happening. So you can get a sense of what that looked like as far as where she was invited to attend and the meetings and the mentoring and that kind of information, separate from evaluation, but it's a goal that's important to have a focus on this year, especially for this board. It's the only principal turnover in the SU.
Right.
But not the only leadership transition. There's several of those at the high school this year.
Okay. And then we were looking at a planning day that was just going to be the AM hours. Basically, I don't know what, 8 to noon? Is that our...
Yeah, that's what we've done the last few years, I think.
I mean, is that still...
Yeah, I have to be back
Okay.
to work at noon. I had to negotiate to get those hours off.
Right.
So.
And actually, I was going to ask for more, but I'm looking at what we've
You got
written down
plenty.
already. You know,
Right.
Yeah,
we not even. I mean,
it could
we have a
definitely
list
take more
of
than
things.
4 hours
Right.
for me.
Right.
I mean, I'm willing to go all day.
Location?
You know, it's worked pretty well at the Essex. You know, it's someplace away from everything else.
Would you like me to see if I could reserve it?
Yeah.
Same, the boardroom. Plus, you're coming in, I think, on Thursday of this week at 5 o'clock for new board member orientation.
I am. I thought it got moved to the 30th.
Well,
That was April 30th, and then now it got moved to.
yeah, I think it's Thursday.
Yeah.
I think it's just before Leaders at Work.
Right.
At any rate, that'll give me an opportunity once you have the orientation for you to see what our teacher evaluation model looks like, what our current administrative evaluation model looks like. So at least you have an understanding of what the tools are that we're using in the processes, and along with a whole bunch of other stuff. So
Yeah.
you and Liz
Great.
Subin from U46 are attending.
Thursday at 5.
Thursday
Is
at
that what we said?
5.
Yeah.
And we'll also have another new board member. So there'll be 3 new board members this year, 1 from each board.
Oh, that's right. Left.
Mm-hmm. Dukes
Left.
is moving. Yeah.
Moving.
Back to Tennessee.
Who
So,
is?
Glenn Dukes.
Oh, he is moving now.
Yeah. So that board will be in the process of where you have been with having a board member leave during term.
Right.
So
So I wasn't a chair.
they're gonna
Now, in
be-
our case, Tim actually was elected because he
Right.
went on the ballot, so we don't have to worry
right.
about
He's
appointing anybody.
elected, but
Thank
you
God.
had that appointment period of time, and they'll have that appointment period of time.
Right.
As well.
On the planning day in July, would there be any information yet on the safety and security changes that are being made in the school, or anything that needs to be discussed with the board, or are we just going to get follow-ups throughout the year, how it's working?
Well, we're lucky to have Grant Geisler here in the audience tonight.
It's a good question. Just because we haven't had a chance to get together on the topic yet, I haven't seen what the product is that we're going to put in yet, and so I've got to look at that so that we can come up with protocols. I've got to run it through the principals to make sure they're comfortable with the protocols. What we are going to do during the summer is install the system and to get the protocols in place so that at the beginning of the year we'll be ready to go. But the details of it, I'm not sure when we're going to have it, whether it'll be in time for the July meeting or not.
The leadership team is working on it the week of August 13th, 14th,
Oh.
and 15th. So the protocol piece, but you could have an update on the hardware and functionality.
The main thing, I guess, is just throughout next year, is just ensuring that we're updated as to how it's working in a way of how we're going to monitor that.
And who's working it, I guess? We still don't know.
Huh?
Who's going to be
Right.
working it?
Yeah.
So did I miss the discussion?
No, it's on a future agenda item for our June 9th meeting to talk about it. We haven't had
So you're
a
aware of
conversation.
the article that passed?
Oh yeah. But like, was there already a plan made before you guys, once you decided to have the article? Was it already planned out? Okay, if it passes, bam, this is what we're doing. We're doing it. Okay, so
No.
then I thought, because I thought we were gonna have a discussion. Okay, what do we do now that the article passed? Before we got into, this is all the things that we're implementing or not implementing, and like when are we gonna do it? And because I thought, I thought we were gonna talk about.
Well, when the community came forward with concerns, what we did is, because it was budget season, what we did is we went forward and did a cost analysis of what the system would cost and We also had an audit done, a safety audit done. And so when the article was presented, there were things within the article that said we were going to do those things. We had agreed, you had agreed as a board that we would do.
That's
Right,
kind of what I was
what
asking.
things to
Right. what
purchase.
yeah.
Okay,
and
so
install.
that, based on
Rest
those
of it.
things were the things that
Yes.
you guys are, the board already basically
Authorized.
kind of
Right.
was thinking that's what we're gonna go do. If it,
But
if
we
it passes.
haven't had the conversation of who is going to
Or
run
the
this, how are we
training,
going to
or
be
the
it.
protocol.
Yeah, right.
None
but
of
like
that.
when, how.
Right.
Right.
And the training.
Now you mentioned
and all
Right.
there's an item in the leadership committee. I thought I heard you say something about leadership committee in this.
The leadership team, education leadership team, we're going to find time to talk about the protocol that will be followed, talk about the training for the WHO.
The leadership
you know,
committee is a CCSU-wide, and this is only affecting.
Right. We'll have breakouts during our summit,
Okay.
and it'll be specific to PC.
But the assumption is that we're gonna follow what we priced out, which is doing bullet-resistant film on selected glass, which we've already done that audit on where we wanna do that for step one. And the other assumption was an access control system where you would have to get buzzed in. And I think the expectation from the community is that we were gonna have that in place. Maybe not on day one,
Right.
but we are gonna, the only really good time to get that kind of stuff installed is over the summer. So we're gonna look at it. We've already got, some samples as far as products that are out there. We're actually using one in one of our locations at the high school. So I think, we'll be looking at what hardware to put in place and then coming up with a protocol with principals on how they're gonna make it work, who's gonna be doing the buzzing in and all that kind of good stuff. So I don't see that the board is gonna have to, come up with a bunch of work on how we're gonna do this in each individual school. I think it'll be our work with the principals on how it's gonna work.
Yeah, that wasn't really what I was talking about. It was more like, what exactly are we gonna do? When are we gonna do it? Are we comfortable with where we are? Are we?
Do we need to review policy to make sure our policies are in place to even do something like this? I mean,
right.
Well, that's why I thought we were talking about it at the meeting. Are we going to be having this discussion at the carousel? Because my one main concern is who's deciding who's buzzing people in. And there's going to be a lot of questions that come up. Is this person not allowed to leave this station because, there's other things that are going to come up. So there needs to be a conversation. I was just wondering who's having the conversation, who's deciding these things.
Yeah, that again will go back to the leadership team to talk about with the protocols and the knowledge of those that sit on the safety committee, so that that we're calibrated. Actually, you asked a good question when you said, well, isn't this just a PC issue? No, it's not. Access control is across our SU. And so we'll be taking guidance, including with Essex Town, because access control is really about preparation for first responders so that they know what to expect when they come to that area. It's about a delay, and that's all it's about, 3-minute delay. So we're going to be using the knowledge of the experts on access control as far as buzzing in, who gets trained, how does it work for protocol. Grant has already reached out to Essex Town. We have a system in place at the high school right now, so we'll take best practice and do that work as a leadership team.
Do you think we'll have any answers by planning day that we could be kind of briefed on the plan?
See, your planning day is July 11th, and the leadership team. The summit, where we'll have quality time, is August, I think it's 13, 14, 15, or 12, 13, that week. So it's after that. I think you will definitely have information by your August board meeting, which will be good before your community begins to access. And I'm sure principals will be doing a lot of information, because one of the concerns, the greatest concern, was that we continue to have welcoming environments. And where is that balance and how does it work and how's it working successfully in other schools so that our schools are not these locked fortresses, and then we find that balance of safety and welcoming environments.
I have a problem how we're doing this, though. This is a community decision, and it's being taken out of the community and how we're implementing this. That was the whole point of this, having this as an article, was because this was a change in how our schools are run, and we wanted the community to weigh in on it. So now the community has voted yes to implement this. We're taking what we're going to do and now giving it to leadership committee and Essex Town, which is not even part of that, to say how we're going to implement this.
But isn't that just sorting out the details? Is what they're talking
Right.
about? I mean, it's we're doing what.
Right.
No, we don't.
what
We
wanted.
no, we gave a real high level. We're going to buy
That's
a
what I
budget
mean.
system.
That's what I mean.
How it was implemented.
We didn't say yet. No one said.
Right. Well,
That's what they're just figuring out.
Right, but I feel that's a community decision how we implement this, and not to be decided by members of Westford or the town or U46. This is a K-8 decision.
Well, we're talking about consulting with the Public
has to work.
Safety Committee, the school
Yeah,
public
I
safety.
just feel this went from this went from a K-8 decision, a local decision, to now how this is going to be implemented, the policies are going to be used, the protocol, who's going to do what, is now taken away from PC committee and is being done by leadership. Am I missing? I feel like I'm missing something here.
Yeah, no, I guess what I understood is they're just going to go talk to everybody that they need to talk to. School's already using it, where we're using it in the high school, all the experts, other
Right.
other
They're
coordination
gonna come to us in August
and then come to us and
in
say
August and tell us
and
the
say
plan.
and
here's
tell-
the plan.
But we don't have a decision on it because it'll be implemented a week later. So
Well-
they're going to tell us how to do it. We're not having a decision. We're being told, here's what we came up with, and this is what you're going to do.
Well, we could say don't do it. We don't have to do anything.
Okay, well,
we
that's
don't
fine.
even have to. We don't even have to do it even
That's
with
fine.
the public
I wanna
voting
make sure-
on
I
it.
want to make sure we agree
can
on that,
decide
because
to do whatever we want.
It comes in
with the board.
August. Well, it comes in August.
Right.
There won't be this. It'll be either do this or do nothing at all.
I think that
Well,
your community
for the time
already
being.
weighed in and said, we are resourcing you to buy this
Right.
equipment.
Right.
We have an expectation that you'll put the bulletproof glass on, like you said, that you'll buy access control systems and that protocols will be forthcoming. It's the work of administration and leadership to provide you with the protocols. If there's something in that protocol that you don't want,
Then we can
You-
figure it out at that point.
Right.
Right, but I'm saying by getting it in August, we have no recourse to say, okay, now nothing's going to be done by September. I think we need this
No, but
information
we
much
don't-
earlier.
But if there was something I guess what I see is if there is something that the whole board doesn't like about the protocol,
Right.
then you just don't start doing it until
Right.
everybody's
okay,
comfortable
okay,
with it.
well, okay.
Right.
I think we're setting ourselves up for not implementing something in September. I think we,
Well, but if that's the best thing to do,
Okay,
because
that's fine.
we were going to
Okay.
make the best decision,
Right,
because
okay.
in the
by getting this
community's
in August,
interest.
I thought it felt like it was like, well, other things we got. Okay, here it is. You can either implement this or not implement anything at all. Well, I feel if not implementing anything at all, we've not.
But why would it be so black and white? If there's it would probably be only some piece of it which we don't like.
Maybe we don't.
Then we would go back
right.
to.
But we don't know.
Can we figure that out?
By August, we have no. If we
He's
did this in
talking about a
August,
time
we have no
constraint.
time
He's feeling
to
the
fix
time
this.
constraint of that we won't.
Right,
we'll
I'd
get
rather-
Oh,
it
I
the
guess.
week
Oh, I
before.
guess. Yeah, I feel like I am under no. This is a big change.
Well, that's fine.
I feel like I am under no, unless the board already
right,
discussed
but
it.
what
And
I
they
hear
felt
was
like,
we're going to implement something by September. Well, I said, well, geez, that doesn't sound
I don't feel like we need
okay,
to do
I
it
felt
by
I felt like
September.
that was what we were hearing here, and I'm like, well, I don't know
I
if we're
think
ready
that,
for that.
Grant is pointing out one thing, which is construction things need to happen in the summer.
Right.
But actual use and implementation could.
Okay.
There's no.
Okay,
To me,
that's-
there's
okay,
no
okay,
requirement.
that's not what I. Okay, that's not what I
If
heard.
we're not
Okay,
ready,
okay, that's what,
in fact, let's say they come back and the plan is, well, we have to train 52 people, and we just can't get it done by August 28th. Okay, when are we? Then they're going to say we can get it done by September 28th.
Okay.
Okay, then we're okay. Then we start on September 28th.
Right, okay,
but
that's-
we're fulfilling the intent.
Right.
Right. I mean,
Right.
we did the work in the summer to implement, construct it and install it, and now we're doing the good
Well,
protocol and
was-
training to
was
make
said
it well
earlier
used.
that it was kind of already that was a foregone conclusion, and that we'll be telling the people ready. This was happening in September, and I think we're way
I
ahead.
don't
Of
think-
well, that's
yeah,
what I
yeah,
just
yeah.
said.
Oh, okay.
So I think we're 2 steps. We're a couple steps away from that point.
Could be.
Yeah, could be right.
Well,
So-
I think for me, for this particular topic, the biggest thing that I would like to see is just identify what pieces all need to be completed prior to implementation.
Right.
So, is it policy, protocols, installation, whatever else. I mean, just identify all the pieces that have to be completed, and then let people discuss, what the protocols are, what the training is, all those parts. And
I'm
then
just thinking this might be a good case study for planning day on what's your job and what's my job.
Yeah.
Right.
Because a lot of the details you're getting into, you don't need to get into.
Right.
I mean, I can tell you, this is what we're going to buy, this is how we're going to run it, and if there's big issues with how we're going to run it, then yeah. But if we're talking about, well, in Fleming, this is the person who's going to run it, and if that person's not there, you don't need to get into.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, and that's not what I'm
plan
talking
C
about.
and D.
I'm just talking about identify these chunks of items that need to be completed prior to actually implementing the training. Okay, check. We've done all the training that's necessary.
Yeah, there isn't
So-
any training, by the way. I mean, just so you know, Essex Town did this, and they couldn't find anybody to train. So there'll be some challenges, but we'll work it out.
No, you make a good point, Grant. I think there is confusion. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing or not doing, I think. And it's such a big issue, and we put it in there. So I think we'd be happy to say, yes, go do that. But we need to know who's supposed to do what so that we can back off from it. Like, that you will, whose job is whose? I think you're right. There needs to be a definition of who's supposed to do what, just so we know, because it seems like it's confusing.
Is there any confusion that we're supposed to install access control systems in our schools so people have to get buzzed in?
Oh, no.
No.
Okay, so everybody understands that.
So we
Good.
did
Okay.
installation.
Then what we're dealing with is just when is the building going to be open? Like
That's right.
reporting it at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day, there might be 15 minutes where it's not being used just because of the volume of traffic in and out.
Right.
And
I'm
then
not
other
even
than
talking about
that,
that
it's
part.
going to be an access control system that we're going to figure out how to manage as far as buzzing people in. Okay.
I mean, I don't need a project plan because you can do projects all the time, and big ones.
Right.
Like,
And we
I don't
did.
need that. The only thing I think that would be on the list is policy. That's
Yeah.
board work.
And I don't think this would
But
be a policy issue. It's really just a
It's a
protocol
procedures.
documenting how
Right.
it's going to be done so that we're standard across the 4 schools.
Well,
Right.
when it's going to be when the system's going to be used.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
24/7? Is it
That's procedures.
Right.
The board's job was to ask the community for the resource, if there was the intent, desire, and the resource. And you did that. You framed an article, it was voted on, and you know that the community spoke, and that's what their expectation is. It's administration's job now to make it happen for you. And we're hoping to have it happen for you as school begins,
Right,
so
right.
that everybody understands what that's going to look like and feel like.
Yep. Yeah, my question was just as long as the board was, because I was not here before, in the preliminary discussions, and so I'm just sort of checking in on what, that the board actually really decided to now, after the vote happened, to proceed fully with everything that we said, right? Because I don't agree with that. But if the board already decided, then I don't want to redecide, and I'm just one board member. So
we didn't decide that.
Okay, good. Then we should talk about it.
All we decided was to put it in front of the community.
That's what I thought.
Decide whether we allocate the money
Correct.
to purchase these systems.
Right.
How they be implemented was going to be a separate discussion. It was.
Yeah.
Are they 8 to 5? Are they? Who's going to do it? There was a lot of questions there that weren't being addressed up front that had some concerns, particularly who was going to do this, right? So it's I don't know.
I guess that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay,
Like,
maybe
I guess all
we're
the
not concerned about it.
When we put the article and the group of parents turned out at ADL, and when we as a board voted in budget and decided to put this article on, they were told there would be bulletproof film, resistant film, not bulletproof, bullet resistant, and that we would have access controls. on high priority windows only, and we would do the access controls. That's what the community and they voted on. So we don't have a choice as a board whether we go forward. We put it out, we did the article, and the community voted on that.
Your understanding as a board that you reached was
Yeah,
you weren't going to make the decision. You wanted the community to make the decision. And the way you would know if they were in favor of it was by creating a separate article.
Right, and we
the
boiled it
problem
down.
is that there was an assumption that we were going to come back as a board and then discuss the details, but now we're realizing that that piece is out of our hands. Right?
Oh, no.
Well, I didn't really ever think that we were going to discuss the details, that we were just kind of the oversight of it to say, you know, when all is said and done, that everything has been completed prior to actually implementing.
That's
I
right.
guess is what I'm getting
That's
at.
right. So what you will do is you will see a protocol. You will see it based on best practice research. You will have that information, and part of your role then would be communicating with your constituents. Because let's be very realistic here, that wasn't your last request. That was the beginning of this request.
Right.
So I think there'll be plenty of discussion moving forward about community wanting more. They already explained to you some additional things that they wanted, and this is where we came to an agreement to go this far.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think knowing that you were able to say you were able to delay access, which is what this is, was what you had agreed on. And you agreed by bringing it forward in a separate article to have the community decide.
Yeah, I think I'm clear now is that discussion happened and there was more than just these, I'll just call it 2 items, that discussion happened. That's how it got boiled down to what the board was comfortable with was these 2 things, but still put the article, have the community say, are these, you know, the discussion all happened to narrow it down to we're comfortable doing these 2 things, we would do these 2 things if the community supports it, which they did. So we don't now need to re-talk about that. We that discussion really already happened. It was the intent of the board at the time. That's what I was just looking for.
Okay.
I think I got that now. You know,
Okay.
that seems good. And then details of you know, they're gonna administration's gonna sort out all the details and then come back with okay, here's how.
So I'm not sure how quick we can do the protocols, because you would think that this would be something that is out there in a bunch of different places, but as you start trying to get your hands on it, you find out there isn't really one.
Yeah, right.
So I'm still trying to find a good sample protocol, but just so nobody's surprised, my thinking was that we were talking about access control during the school day, between reporting in when there's a group of people and closing whenever there's a bunch of people leaving. So we're talking about maybe like 5 minutes after the bell rings to 5 minutes before the end of day bell rings. In between is when we're talking about access control. Other than that, I don't think we were. But I mean, just so you know, that's kind of the vision we're looking at, and then I will get protocols as quickly as we can come up with a good set of protocols and training.
Right, and
that sounds like that's
I think you know, perhaps some conversation framed around this a little bit at our June meeting is something we can plan for, just so we have any questions that we come up with between now and then. As far as a further discussion, I don't want to.
Well, I think
keep going on this
with
without
the main topic being, we could start talking how we're going to communicate it to the public about that you know, the connection from this is what was voted on back in April now, and then we're starting to tell them in the summer, heads up, this is what's happening, this is where it stands, you know, the basic of it, like even just that right there would be great. You know, actually I could put it in the like update after this meeting and be like, we talked about it, you know, this is where it's going to be, you know, during the school day.
Right.
You know, that's the plan. It's all about the plan, and then okay, and then more details forthcoming.
Right.
Right.
Late August, though.
until
And
we
we-
get more details, really. So
No,
it's just
right,
gonna
yeah,
be
yeah,
the
right.
first-
It's gonna be like at the end
I
of
mean,
the
if
summer.
any information comes between now
We-
and then, I'm not purposely gonna
Right,
withhold
right, you can
it.
let us know,
exactly.
right.
Yes, no worries.
The idea isn't to keep you in the dark. The
Right.
idea
No,
is
no.
just to have the time that we need to have the important conversations with the
Yeah.
people that are gonna be responsible for
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Well, that put us
Always-
right back on
Right
schedule
on.
again.
Yeah, I was a little worried
Always
about
come
Linda
back.
I know.
Wright
I thought
coming
I was
in.
thinking the same thing. But now it's no problem. So, a little update on climate surveys.
You know, just before I go there,
Oh.
it would be nice to have you did a great job of identifying lots of topics, and then you narrowed it to 4 hours. And it would be helpful for me in structuring planning day, an agenda, is to name your 3 top priorities that go first. We have the board self-evaluation, we have universal preschool and budget impact, we have space and the rec department, we have the board site, MTSS, we have the SU structure and governance with your 4 schools within the SU. We have evaluation tools for leadership and teachers, and accountability measures around evaluation. And now you've added safety, security updates, and protocols. So you have 8 topics you identified, and I just don't want to leave this agenda topic with not knowing exactly
Right.
what your priorities are and how we structure the time moving forward so that it meets your needs.
Well, we can discuss it right now, or if you guys want to leave it to Dave and I to set up the agenda for the planning day.
I guess the only
It's up
other
to you
thing I
guys.
would talk about is we should narrow it to, at minimum half and half, half with admin and half without.
Right.
So the
Yes.
self-assessment
Yeah, that's-
piece can be without the
Right.
without part, and then the half if there's something that we need, something to come,
Right.
which we need to interact if those topics are there. I mean,
So you want administration for 2 hours?
yeah,
And we've had in the past. I don't think we've had that.
if at
that's
all,
not much
right?
shorter than that.
Only if we need them, right? I think is what I was saying. I don't know exactly what
Right.
we're asking for there. That where we
We
I think
really
flexed
that's
it a
need
little
something.
bit the last
last-
couple of years. I mean, I think last year was maybe the first
hour?
hour or so.
Yeah.
The year before that,
that-
I
I mean,
think it
that's
was maybe
great.
half and half. But it's basically no more than half of it.
Yeah, that's
is
what I meant. That's what I
administrative.
meant to say if I didn't say that
Right.
the right way. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
It-
so MTSS is something you'd want administration at.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So you just
Yeah.
But I-
Preschool.
I guess some of those things I felt like were. I guess I would keep educational things for us, unless there's some burning need to be educated about it in that summer meeting, so that like we could use it all year long or something. Which it didn't sound like necessarily any of this stuff was. I guess, especially if we're only going to keep it to 4 hours, right? I guess I would tend to want to keep the presentations on new things, like for other meetings. Like we usually, in a lot of meetings, we get, okay, here's a, presentation about this thing, this system, or whatever. And so that we could keep the focus on, planning the whole year, ahead, planning our meetings, doing our self-evaluation. I mean, I don't know maybe the rest of the board members are not. That's not how they're thinking.
I guess it comes
this
back
is
to the
this is what is
purpose
the
of
board
planning
thinking,
day.
Well,
right?
The security piece, we have it on our agenda for the June 9th meeting,
we
so
don't
we
need
could
that.
take that off.
Yeah, we don't need that.
Planning day. Couldn't we have the discussion then, in June?
Right.
Okay, so that's June 9th.
Communications, as far as any email, we can have that conversation tomorrow quickly and then decide if we wanted to add it or not.
Okay.
I think the understanding principal evals and how they do that, we could do that in an executive session at one of our regular board meetings. In case there's
Yeah, what I mostly, when I was bringing that topic up, what I mostly meant is the board discussing what, not that, I can learn from the board orientation how it's happening, like the mechanics of it.
Right.
That's not really what I was talking about. Like getting a presentation on it or something. I can just learn personally from the board orientation, or any of us can. What I was talking about was like the board discussing what's our role? How do we do our role?
Right. You don't have a role
Right.
other than approving the contracts that are offered annually, and or if that's not a recommendation coming forward. Evaluation is what the superintendent does.
Yeah, you're making it too specific.
Mhm.
I don't mean so specific about
Okay.
about the evaluations. It's like about the role.
Mhm.
How are we verifying that the schools are well run?
Could that be part
I
of
just meant I just was sort of referencing that there's a
Ah.
structure to the schools is a lot of how it happens, but then how does our thing happen at the top? That's what I want to discuss.
Where do we fit in?
Not I don't need
Mhm.
I don't how does it all kind of get rolled up?
Well, I think the MTSS framework will be really helpful for the board to understand. Probably that would be the most important thing
Okay.
for leadership to be available to you.
Okay.
I just,
What about the
I have my concerns, lay them on the table right now around what it looks like and feels like when a board wants to plan separate of its superintendent. I think that's, I can appreciate when you have a topic you want to talk about on your own, whether it's your own work, but to say you're going to have a 4-hour planning day and then just use your superintendent and other admins for educational topics and not to feel included as far as your plan for the year coming forward feels unhealthy as far as our relationship will be concerned, since I'm the person that you've hired to ensure that your goals and plans are realized and actualized. So to be on the outside of that feels wrong to me. So I'm just going to lay that on the table too, since Linda's going to be here now.
Right. Okay, well maybe that's a topic we didn't specifically list. What is the planning day comprised? Because I think you just kind of brought up like another, it's very generalized, but it's like another topic of like a portion of our planning day that, if there's a portion that's like getting educated and the portion of self-assessment, then there's like a middle portion of, it could be whatever order, but of like planning with, with administration, with you on the, how does it go through the whole year?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the problem there is a disconnect, Tim. What happens, the CCSU board will set the annual work plan for the superintendent and be evaluating the superintendent.
Yeah, right.
So there's an annual work plan CCSU board will agree to. Anything that our board wants to do on planning day, the superintendent is also responsible for, so they've got to be involved in it because you're going to be assessing your superintendent on whether partly if some of their role involves making a goal, then the superintendent needs to be involved. And I understand what Judy's saying because she's going to be assessed at CCSU level on what the high school comes up with for goals, what we come up with goals, and what Westford. So I understand what she's saying. So I think we have a disconnect as to.
So do we have to come up with goals at this meeting?
You were the one
Well,
who
that's
said
the
we were
annual
gonna plan
planning
the whole
day.
year going forward. Those were your words.
That's
You wanted
Right. No.
to-
I'm trying to kind of refine down what the what the topic is for the meeting, right? Where we come up with goals together. Is that what we should be doing?
But the other two that I've attended, no one has been left out, but we have, you
Open
have
to
left,
whatever.
we've been, no, I'm saying, to her point that you were making, administration does leave at some point, right? And not because you're asked to, but we have been left there as board members so that's the setup that has been before, so.
Right.
I left last year around noontime and someone else had to write the minutes. And when I left there, Judy was still there and you guys adjourned like 10 minutes later in the minutes.
Last year we were there.
So we never.
Or before you wanted to have a conversation about EJRP as a board and your role within that. And that's fine. I'm not
we can play it
saying
by
that
ear.
you can't do those things. I'm just saying we should, as a board, talk about the purpose and what you want to have accomplished that day. So it's always, as usual, easy to identify topics, but then going back and prioritizing them. But I guess the board chair and vice chair can meet with me and get input from you based on the topics that were identified about what your greatest needs or desires are, and to ensure, because it's a July 11th date, that I know soon I have a good idea of which administrators to ensure are available. And if not, then maybe that'll change the composition of your agenda.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that.
Okay.
As long as you guys are.
So
you guys will come up with the agenda, and then will we see it before, like, at our next meeting, and then decide, yeah, that's what we want to do, and go from there, and then we can decide if we want to change something.
You'll see it pretty much as soon as we finish.
Yeah.
You know, having the discussion.
So the June agenda will be available no later than the June meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah, so clearly we need to make one of our items a framework for these meetings, because they happen every year. So what we should be doing is just pulling out the sheet that says, this is what you do.
And maybe when you do your board
new board members
self-evaluation,
aren't like in the
it'll
dark
help you.
on like, what do we do? Oh yeah, there's a framework for it. Specific topics are different, but.
Well, you remember your framework from
You know.
New 46. You brought up the self-eval piece.
Yeah, the self-eval. Yeah, I mean that's one piece that I
Right.
just remember. That's like, okay, if you just do it every time, then
Right.
that way you're doing it.
All right, since Ms. Wade Simpson is here, we're going to skip to the
Switch to
legislative update. And
welcome.
Welcome.
Come closer.
Yeah, you can come up here.
Sure.
It'll be easier for us to hear you.
Would you like my chair?
Or, actually, it's probably better if I sit here so I can look at it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay, good, thanks.
Good to see you.
RETN, can you hear her if she's to talk from there?
Okay.
Great.
Is this a mic?
Did you get any sleep this weekend?
It was a long weekend, but we're done.
So you've officially adjourned.
Yes. Pass these out, and of course they've changed since I had these printed last week.
Great.
Because everything changed in the Conference Committee, so
You will tell us how it
I will
changed.
tell you how it has changed. The rates are actually the same, which is good news. But I'd like to just focus a little bit on
Do you have enough for the cheap seats?
I do.
We can share.
Okay. So that's the, I asked for a long view, looking back and looking forward, just because I thought it would be helpful to you all to have some context as we're going into this next budget season. The bad news is that it looks like the fund is going to be in as bad shape next year as it is this year, so we're looking at another 5, 6, 7 cent increase on top of what we've had this year. We had worked some
We kind of shuffled the furniture on the deck, so to speak, this year within the residential rate, and we're able to keep the rate down to 98 cents. It was supposed to go up to $1, if you recall, originally. That was the prediction from the tax commissioner. We did some adjusting within the residential tax rate. We, in the House, at any rate, felt very strongly that we wanted to look closely at the data about who was paying and, you know, where the money was coming from. What we found over time was that the largest increase in property tax payments came in the 90,000 to 150,000 income range. That is where the slope is really, really steep in terms of how payments have increased over time. Once you get to 150, they kind of level out. And as a percentage of income, it really was very, very high in that range. And it sounds like a lot of money, but as we all know, you could get 2 teachers into that range quite easily. And then, you know, have a teenager with a summer job, it can throw you all out of whack. So we were, what we did was we came in, we increased the income sensitivity base up to, I believe, 1.94 was where we went with that. It gave us a little bit of money to lower the peer rate for property values. When we went to conference committee with the Senate, they did not agree on anything that we did. So, you know, it was like literally we did this tax package. We voted on this about an hour before we adjourned on Saturday evening. So, and, you know, it's 3 people from the House, 3 people from the Senate, and they, you know, they hammer it out. It was very important to us to keep the rate at 98 cents. We just felt it was really burdensome to go beyond that because we're looking at another really pretty drastic increase next year. So the way they achieved it, because they kept the income rate at the same, at the 1.8, which was what was originally proposed, they reduced the base education amount. So this is where Grant comes in because now Grant's going to have to go back and refigure all of that.
Can you just do me the columns? What ones am I looking at here?
Okay,
just describe them just so I know which, or, yeah.
Okay, so basically, the 2014 rates, this was from last year.
Last year, on the left.
The center column is what the tax commissioner recommended. The right column is what the House passed.
And you're verbaling to us.
And I'm verbaling the
that.
changes
Okay,
to that, right. So the big change really is in the base tax rate on household income, which is going to remain at 1.80%.
Instead of the 1.9.
Right,
Yep.
and we got that, that extra 2 cents off the tax rate by changing the base education amount. And we are now at 92.85. It was projected to be 93.82. Now, if you recall, that amount is supposed to go up by a percentage based on a CPI. It's one of the indices that is unique to New England, and I believe it's based on, is it labor rates?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's the
it comes from the Boston
New
Fed.
England Economic Project, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
the NEEP, and I forget what the specific is.
But it's
it was
one
2.6% this year.
Right. So this, so we have reduced that to get the 2 cents. So what happens is that means everything else gets juggled within your tax calculations. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. If you look at the big paper, you will see a look back from, we just went through 2015. This goes back to 2005, and you can see where the rate has been. The rate has been really, you know, was around $1 for most of the 2000s until values seemed to, because there's a 3-year rolling rate on values in the state. Once that rate kind of caught up, you can see where it went down in 2008, and that was because values had actually caught up at that point. So higher values, lower rate. Now we're at a point where values are actually diminishing, and we also have another exacerbating factor of fewer students in the state. So all those pressures are really kind of shooting things up. So I really just wanted to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about what's likely to happen next year, which is that as the student population goes down, you know, we end up with fewer people paying for students, particularly if education spending continues to rise. I think last year statewide it went up about 60 million, 64 million, something like that. So that's 6.5 cents on the tax rate right there. And it gets spread out. We're in an unfortunate position of, fortunate that our home values have all stayed pretty stable, but unfortunate that the rest of the state, you know, those values go down and we make up the difference. So it's kind of a double-edged sword as it comes to our communities. But the other thing we tried to do this year was to put through a consolidation package, which passed the House, went to the Senate, got completely chopped up. They could not come to agreement, so we ended up with nothing at the end of the session at all. But I did want to remind you all that there is still time to get in on the voluntary consolidation tax relief plan. And it's 8 cents off the first year, 6 cents off the second year, 4 cents the third year, and 2 cents the fourth year. Right now, we are too late. We can only get 3 of the 4 years unless they extend it. But at this point, we could still get the first 3 years of a tax break. The consolidation report, I think, probably could be dusted off, have some numbers updated and put out to the communities again. Kim Gleason, who is the new town chair, was in the State House numerous times this last year testifying in favor of consolidation. So there may be a change in composition of boards where it may be a good time to bring this back out and ask the community again if they would like to go down this road. I know that the taxes are getting to be untenable for some people, and we are sensitive to that, but we have a system where it sets itself as kind of, it's an interesting system that was set up so that it kind of self-perpetuates. And I think at the state level, we feel very strongly that we are completely underfunding higher education. We are like almost dead last in the country for what we contribute as a state to our state colleges and UVM. And it's really important to a lot of reps that we try to rectify that. So we've got a study committee looking at that this summer, trying to get back to a ratio that was held back in the 80s and early 90s. I don't know what the recommendation is going to be, but I do know that they may be looking at making some adjustments out of the K-12 fund as we continue to lose students. I mean, we're down to a little over 80,000 students right now, which is just really, really small number. So, we're looking to figure out how we can do this in a way that makes sense. At the same time, we also passed universal pre-K. So, trying to get at the kids when they're young so that they have fewer service requirements as they enter, your upper grades of school. I mean, that's really important, and we all get that. But it is an additional cost that we all absorb and pay. So it's been a tough conversation trying to put enough money into the prevention end so that down the road we're able to maybe see some savings, but also understanding that we're really kind of at a breaking point with education spending. It's just really...
When do districts have to satisfy the universal pre-K regulations?
Well, we are already in the system, so we are fine. You can, I think you have to provide at least 10 hours a week for students. So we're already in a number of...
Is it per third and four-year-olds?
3 and 4-year-olds, yes.
Because we aren't doing all of them yet.
Well, I think we are doing.
Are we? We're not doing all
No.
of them. So my understanding of it is that any parent who wants to come in and request universal preschool now will receive the amount, which has also changed, I think, from currently we pay $2,600, and my understanding is it moves up to $32.
That's what I had heard.
32, yeah.
Statewide rate.
Yeah.
For a statewide rate has
Right.
been set. So I think currently we're serving 60 preschoolers, and typically we have a kindergarten enrollment of over 100. So if we had 40
more right.
students enter with that request, then that would
So
be
that's my question.
Right.
What's the date that we have to satisfy that?
My understanding is it's coming this next year. So the thing is that
So
these.
our budget didn't include that for universal
But-
for all students.
So you gave us the money?
Well, this.
No, 'cause it hadn't passed.
It had not passed. My understanding, Marla, is that these students have to be enrolled in a child care center. That it's not just that every student gets this, that they have to be enrolled in an approved center. They have to be STARS approved. It's not that anybody can walk in and get that. So, to the extent that kids are staying at home, they're not going to be coming in and asking for that.
It would be interesting to find out from Erin where we are with people requesting versus receiving, because it's universal access, meaning an opportunity.
Right.
It's not mandatory, so a family may choose not to send their child to preschool. I think the last time I checked, I think we
there
were
were
on a wait list or not.
2 or 3 open slots.
Yeah, we did fill them all
Yeah,
this
I
past
think,
year.
we're in much better shape than some who aren't even doing preschool.
Right.
Well,
We
there
are.
a few districts that are not doing anything. And then you have Burlington that has had a wait list forever because they just have so many kids and they just could never really satisfy their slots. So I'm not sure it's going to have a huge impact on your budget. You also get to count those students as part of your ADM.
You get to
I
count
think a
sooner
quarter
now?
percentage.
You get to count a 0.46 ADM for
Right.
each child in pre-K. I think, though, you have to wait until the second year to get the full credit because it's 2-year average for equalized pupils. So, the full impact is in the second year.
Yeah,
that
that's what I was wondering,
to
did that change
Yeah.
with this change?
I don't have the details, honestly. I don't.
So the other increase I was curious about was for new teachers entering the system.
Right, okay.
Can you speak a little bit about that?
It's it is the unfunded health care for retired teachers, and it's about $28 million a year that's coming out of the general fund it's actually not coming out of the general fund, the general fund pays the teacher retirement, which includes this health care assessment. Right now, they're paying that health care assessment out of the core of the retirement, so to the extent that that is not going to retiree benefits where it should be, it is becoming unsustainable. So the treasurer, the administration, and Vermont NEA came together to figure out how they could work this. And this is not something that any of us really wanted to do. But for every new teacher that comes into the system, so all of your teachers who are here now, this is not going to apply to them. They'll continue to be
The old plan.
the old plan. So this will be brand new teachers coming out of school or from another state who have never worked in Vermont before and are new to the system. And there will be, I think, $1,027 a year assessment to cover that health care cost. So it will be new teachers from July 1 moving forward for each year.
First year teachers to the state of Vermont.
Right. So if they're
I'm sorry, there's something else just popped into my head too, as far as, a lot of times we hire a 0.25 or a 0.5. Does that do you know if that would be prorated
I would
by?
assume that it would be because all their other benefits are prorated as well, aren't they?
Usually, that's
Yeah.
why I didn't know about this.
I mean,
one.
I think what you should look for is the treasurer to issue guidance on all the details of all of this, but we get the 50,000 foot view, so we don't necessarily get.
Just what's the difference? Like, this is new money we pay. This is we pay less. This is the general fund pays less. What?
This
just
is
describe
the teacher's retirement account actually becoming sustainable over time, because this is it's a benefit that was never really thought that it was going to become such a large liability. And
no, I understand the intent. Just what you mentioned a number.
It's local money.
Yeah, so it is. It'll be in your local budget.
It increases our budget. We
right.
have to pay
right.
extra $1,600 or some number per new teacher.
1,000.
Also, the teachers aren't paying. We're paying. I mean,
correct.
Okay, I thought you said the teacher was
it's
paying.
going to go in our budget as teacher retirement funding for new teachers.
Right. So it has been exempted from ed spending, so all of your calculations in terms of penalties and getting into those kinds of things, it is not included in that. So it's a flat fee, kind of like when you do maintenance or those kinds of things. It's not included in your ed spending amount. So.
And is it a one-time or is it?
Every year.
Every year
for that new teacher forever.
Inflated every year.
Right.
For that teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
So just making up for the sins of the past that we didn't pay for the teachers.
Right. We never paid for it.
Right. Well, but we didn't know. Like I said, we didn't know what to expect.
Right.
We never spent.
I mean, this pension deal, I think the last time it was changed was in 1992, and it was well before cost of health insurance, really got to be so sky high. And I don't think
Is
anybody
there any discussion on, requiring more years of service to reach, eligibility?
Where does all that happen?
We did that actually a couple of years ago, Dave. We changed the amounts that teachers were contributing. They are now contributing more than they were a couple of years ago. And we changed the ages that you can retire. There was a point where you could retire after a certain number of years in the system, regardless of your age. And I think it's now 58 and a half. It used to be you could retire at 50 or.
All companies in government are facing this. I mean, you're saying people are living longer, and
yes, they are.
Retiring at 58 or 55 is probably not something that was factored into. Or living 40 years.
So those changes were made. I think it was in 2009 was when those changes first came to the teachers system. This is a separate piece that we've known about for a long time, and you just have to kind of figure out which pieces you can take off, because you can't do it all at once. So this was a big one. Now, one of the things that the Vermont NEA has said is that whenever the state goes to its universal health care system, they are all in on that. So that may make a difference in how this all gets funded. I mean, nobody really knows what it's going to look at this point. It's really a big mystery. Nobody knows how it's going to be paid for. And so we all go along in kind of a mysterious state, but there's a sense of urgency in that the cost of health care and health insurance has become as much as buying a house. I mean, it's almost as much as a mortgage payment, and it's just becoming really, really difficult to to have a thriving economy when you've got so much going into one necessary sector. So
now you mentioned dividing up the pie differently between higher education and K through 8, and how we have been keeping up with college.
Right.
Has the pie not also increased proportionally? If the rate of inflation for government, school spending is such, have we been falling behind? So has our pie not been increasing fast enough?
Our pie was leveled for many years. Yeah.
And I ask because higher education, I don't want to say hasn't done as well a job, but costs of there have increased in colleges much faster than they have in K through 8 spending.
Yeah.
So if you give them more money, aren't you helping to justify, or it's like the whole advent of college loans that's helped spur the higher cost of education, inflating faster than
you
else.
have more people.
So by giving them more money, are you enabling them to not control their costs? These are difficult questions. I'm just curious. Any discussions like that,
those are great questions. And what we see, particularly at UVM, which is a great institution, but they're looking at diminishing populations. And what's happened is populations are diminishing in this group, the K-12 group, and it's moving on to state colleges and UVM. So UVM is in a position where they're able to recruit outside of the state and outside of the country, and they're in a very good position to do that. You don't see that so much at the state colleges, and they are really struggling, trying to, you know, keep a lid on increases every year and still have it, you know, affordable for Vermonters. So.
You ever thought about allowing public schools to recruit students? I mean, like, public schools can have a student come from out of state and keep them for all 4 years, I believe, we're limited to just 1 year. And that's kind of a positive tuition flow. Have they ever thought about, you know, us trying to attract international students that pay?
You know, I could certainly have that conversation. I don't know if they've looked at, I mean, because my understanding is like a one-on-one. One comes in, one goes out. There's kind of a
right.
So I'm
well, I
not,
learned that from a sports perspective.
Yeah.
You know, some schools can go out and kind of
Yeah.
attract the you know, international, and that's how it really came about. And it's like, well, that's what the unfair advantage is first seen was okay in sports, but But from a revenue standpoint, I would think an international student would be a positive cash flow. I would think, but maybe I'm wrong.
They don't pay any more than anybody coming from out of state, actually. So it's the
Right,
same.
but out-of-state students are typically, or aren't they usually considered a positive? Maybe
they
not.
actually subsidized to a large degree the
It's not like, not like
in-state
colleges.
students.
Colleges, out-of-state person is definitely an you know, a student you want.
Yeah. So the way UVM sets their tuition is they look at how many students they have, they look at their costs, and they come up with a tuition amount. The state pays. What they do is the state payment that goes to UVM then gets credited for all the Vermont students. Now there are some students going to that state that pay, going to UVM that pay zero tuition, because it is really based on your income. And then there are students that pay, you know, the $15,000 a year. Really is based on your income. But I believe about half of the students at UVM have a pretty significant tuition abatement. So, you know, for some it's affordable, but for others, and, you know, I think, you know, in a community like this where we've got, you know, fairly high income in the area, it's...
As compared to other schools, you know, like to St. Mike's or to UNH or, you know, are we...
St. Mike's is, I believe, and Champlain College are actually much, much higher than,
they are, so we're
than
not
UVM.
out of the norm then.
No.
Linda, a different topic, excess spending threshold. I know there was a change there. And I don't know, the board has always kind of, since you've been here, has never had to worry about excess spending. We've always been clear.
Right.
It's still going to be a while, I think, before Essex Junction School District hits the threshold. But I think Essex High School, U46, is going to hit the threshold almost immediately because of the changes. And that will impact then Essex Junction K through 12 tax rate. So I just wanted to make sure people understood that what they did was, and Linda can correct me, instead of every year being, the excess spending being tied to the prior year statewide average and then inflated by 125, now 123%, now they're going to go back to the FY14 statewide average, and that's going to be the anchor. And the only increase is going to be the CPI, and then multiplied by the 123%. So instead of that number going up, you know, 4 or 5% every year, it's only going to go up 2.6 or 2.5. So it's only a matter of time before you'll have to deal with it. But in the near future, the community is probably going to have to deal with it, because I think Essex High School is going to hit it fairly rapidly. And the CPI, the problem with the CPI is we were talking about, you know, what the CPI is. Inflation indice that's used is like a market basket. So at 2.6%, you can tell that's not really salary and benefit related completely, because, you know, health benefits are going up 4.5%, and we were happy with that. When have you seen somebody negotiate a 2.6% salary increase for new money? I mean, obviously, salaries and benefits are going to go up significantly more than 2.6% per year. So it's just a matter of time before a lot of districts, including yours, will end up in excess spending penalty.
And I think these, you know, these are really tough conversations. Some of you went to the Education Summit that was held in January, and, you know, Vermont is the only state in the country that's talking about having mandatory minimum class sizes And we have some schools that have, you know, classes of 5, 6 kids. And I think, you know, it's going to prompt the conversation everywhere. You know, can we increase our class sizes and still, you know, maintain the quality of our teaching and learning? But
Sure
I think
because we're hitting 25 and we have awesome schools.
We do have awesome schools.
Geographic, and that's correct. You know, I appreciate that, and then I get confused when the small schools grants continue to be.
We took that out on the House side.
I know,
and they stripped it.
And I have appreciated. I will go on record for having said I do appreciate the work the House did this year and all the work on H883. And when I reached out to the representatives here locally, I was so appreciative that every rep voted in favor of H883. So I feel like locally there's great support. I'm concerned about the fact that great ideas keep coming forward, like dual enrollment, for example, and $400,000 was allocated, and that's good until next year, and then where do those funds come from? Do those revert back to
They do go back to the high school. They do.
So
they will.
When Grant's talking about hitting that threshold, it'll be dual enrollment, it'll be any new teacher coming in, you know, there'll be personalized learning plans.
Well, you know, are there opportunities to look at maybe looking at athletics in a different way? I know we spend as a district a lot of money on that, and it's not that I don't value it, but, you know, is there a way to look at it in a different way that it's not part of your school budget? I mean, I think those are certainly things that you can look at.
The problem you've got, Linda, when you look at something like that, you're looking at 1 year. Like if we as a board look at sports next year, that's 1 year. This education piece and the problem with the financing is continuing on up. So we're just going to have to, we got to find the real money is in teachers and staffing.
Right.
So
and
if
Paris.
a district needs to save money, that's really the only place left. I mean, you can one-time shot it, look at the athletics, cut programs, have them finance it differently, but that's a 1 year solution. It's not a permanent.
Well, unless you keep that paradigm as your permanent model for how you're going to offer athletics in the district. It does, I mean, I think it does have an impact on our budgets. I know it's not huge, but it's one area that we might be able to look at. I know paras have been a large part of the budget increase. And I don't know, are there other ways to look at how we can offer that kind of teaching assistant service without violating, you know, federal law and, you know.
We've certainly, actually through 153, and you know, as a former board member, have a wonderful shared service model here, and we looked at changing our support for students, our support system, and creating a different structure that's saved funding as well. And are very careful with the any addition of paras unless it's mandated through an IEP. But as we move forward, I was telling the board earlier that I just submitted an Act 153 waiver so that that law doesn't require us to form yet another collective bargaining unit. And so I feel like because we live in a largely populated area, we can do things in a very cost-effective way, and the cooperation of our boards to create shared services has been really effective, as you know. So I would hope that there would be support for a larger system to do something different through a policy and procedure mechanism that was fully supported by our teacher association in the development, so that it doesn't increase costs for us. And I guess for me, I struggle with this concept of 4 or 5 students in a classroom and class size concerns, and I know the expanded K-12 districts would have helped address that, and I know you all worked very hard on that, but it's with disappointment that that those inequities continue. And I don't know the answer to that, except that.
Well, I do. I mean, a lot of us could see just strategically that was just, you know, too much to roll out right at the end of the second year of the biennium. It should have been done this time last year. And it
do you think there'll be, it'll move forward, Linda?
I think that next year it will probably be something pretty much right out of the gate at the beginning of the session. And I think it's going to require work with our senators. You know, you get outside of Chittenden County and it's a very, very different world that they live in. And, you know, you have people who represent 15 towns. There are two reps in this district. So just think about one person representing 15 towns. And many of them with small schools. This was a nonpartisan vote, but it was a fight in the House to get the small schools grant out, and it wasn't going to happen for 6 years. I mean, the first 3 there was nothing. So basically you're on notice for 3 years and then it starts disappearing over the next 3 years.
Is that the what says small schools on uses? Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Small schools grant?
Yes.
7 million.
7 million. It's almost a penny on the tax rate.
Right.
Yeah.
So the reds are still out there as a possibility that you mentioned.
The reds are out there,
but
and
the issue with the red is it's still a supervisory union,
right?
And it's still got all of the downfalls and inefficiencies of a supervisory union. The tax incentive sounds really good, but the problem I keep thinking is, I keep thinking of it as a taxpayer, and I'm going to reduce your tax burden by 8 cents in that first year. In the second year, am I reducing it by 6? Or am I increasing it by 2 more?
Well,
I think that's going to be the view. Is it's going to be every year now you're
issue.
increasing it by 2 more than it would have been.
Right.
So that's just hard.
It is hard, and you know, however, if we had done it this year, we would be looking at a flat tax rate, you know, out of the gate.
Next year, with a 5-cent increase, we'd be looking at a 7-cent increase because we'd get 2 cents less of a discount than we got this year.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, but
I mean, it's
you're still better off.
You're better off than
you know,
and I think that's what you have to do. You have to make the cases. This is where we would be if we had not done this versus this is where we are.
Right, but what we're talking about is the reward. Yeah. That's like actually should be like this extra thing. Right. What you really need to look at is it worth it to do it? Right. Do you actually save money? Right. When they did when all the town discussions happened between the town and Essex, it came out to 0.
Well, no.
So
it didn't
actually. What really happens? That's the question.
We did not articulate what the savings were going to be.
Exactly, we wouldn't do it.
We knew there would be savings.
So are we going to? So it's clear. That's the only way it's going to happen is if we can actually articulate.
And there was a.
This is the savings. This is what gets compressed.
We did.
The problem was the immediacy. There wasn't an immediate savings. There was a transition year or 2, but then we would show savings moving forward. But we didn't model it forward.
Well, yeah, we didn't say we're going to lose 1 superintendent. We're going to lose 1, you know, student services, you know, director. We didn't go through and articulate exactly what those things were, and we said that at the time it felt awkward identifying that some people might lose their jobs and being really specific about that.
And what's changed?
You know. Well, the changes, I think if we're going to come out with this, you have to do that. You have to be courageous and say, we're going to be eliminating these positions over a 2-year period.
Right. And the structure is still an inefficient structure as a supervisory union. I mean, I know I live in one and we are a great one, but there are a lot of supervisory unions out there that are just the epitome of
But you could go to a singular district. I mean, and that was
it's all volunteer right now anyway.
It's voluntary, and it was what was modeled in that merger plan. A single district.
And if that's the way it would be, then it would be, I think, a much more efficient structure.
Right. And we know there would be cost savings in that structure because we wouldn't be doing the laundry repeatedly.
Exactly.
Like we currently are.
Right.
Well,
I think if there's any place, well, because, and Grant has testified
Well, it
on this
depends, right?
topic many times, just the finance system that we currently have, we duplicate the same process repeatedly by dividing
Yeah, every time we have a shared service,
In the
we make 4 checks.
Right.
Every time.
4
It's
POs,
just
4 times everything. So we know it's not an efficient model. And so I'm going to ask you a really hard question since you're here, and I appreciate you coming. At the time that we studied unification, it was a second study. 16 people agreed unanimously that this, was it 14 articles or 13 articles that are identified in Title 16, to bring it forward because they felt that there would be eventually savings through this unified model. Do you think, with the current realization about sustainability and the tax rate increases, that our communities, which you represent, so that's what I'm asking from your representative perspective, are ready for that conversation again?
I think what I'm hearing is that people are ready to move on. I think that, you know, one of the biggest impediments that we faced when we talked about the school district merger was the fact that we were coming off of a very unpleasant municipality vote. And it was, for the first time, we voted to unify into a single town. And it was reversed on a vote of fewer than half of the original voters. And there was such bitterness.
Municipal one you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
There was such bitterness at that point. I mean, I knew we were
That affected
fighting a losing battle at that point. You just knew it didn't matter what the case was going to be. The fact that the municipalities had blown up so badly, I think, was, you know, was really the genesis of that failure.
When legislature designs laws, example, challenges for change, there were incentives to doing it, and very few people did it but Essex Junction and the high school.
There were 5 districts.
When whatever laws you enact, if you do a unified school district enactment and make it mandatory, there's one piece of it where if you make it voluntary and there's incentives, that's great. But I think you gotta have penalties to the districts that don't consider it. I don't think it's enough to have incentives. I think there's gotta be some penalties imposed on the districts that won't even consider it.
Well, that's what we had with the unification plan that came out of the House, which was a carrot stick approach. So it was really, you know, encouraging districts to come to these agreements voluntarily, and the tax incentives were there and they were extended. And if they didn't do it by 2020, the state was going to do it to them. So, I mean,
Right,
it was, you
right,
know,
but that's not a penalty.
well, the penalty is that
Put it
you
off
don't
until
get
they
to
change
design
their
your
mind.
school district
You've
the
lost
way you want it
control.
to. You've
Right.
lost
Yeah,
control
you've
of it.
lost control, but I think you gotta hit people money.
Yeah,
I think you gotta go for the money. The
Negative incentive.
other thing I'm curious about, whenever you talked school merger before, it was always, when we've discussed it, all the municipalities that were going to be talking, like Westford, Essex Junction, the high school, the town of Essex. If one of the communities voted not to do it, then it shot it down for everybody.
Well, that was not true of Westford. Westford was advisable. They were not a necessary component of the unified district.
That was done, so it wasn't.
Right.
So if we do unified district, it becomes voluntary. Is there going to be pieces in it that'll be the same way that, let's say, town of Essex wants to do it, Essex Junction, the high school?
Well, if you look at the charters that, you know, were articulated, it was a give and take. You know, it was not one specific district that had an advantage. It was really a combination of us coming together and looking at all the policies. It was, you know, it took a year and a half.
Right.
92 meetings or something.
Yeah,
It was a really down in the weeds look at what we did, including how we were going to merge all of our labor contracts and how we were going to deal with, you know, maintenance and bonds. And I mean, it was really very, very detailed. I don't think things have changed that much that we couldn't go back and really update the numbers and really,
Yeah,
you know.
if anything, things have
Right.
changed in a way where, you know, the board's working hard on merging at least our internal labor contracts and creating unified teacher agreements and support staff agreements. And when it came to bringing forth responsible budgets, we have made reductions, like our pre-K 8 special ed director's position, the current associate superintendent's position. We've been making those decisions along the way to become and remain sustainable and cognizant of the tax burden. It's that shared responsibility, since we have a shared financial system, where it would be helpful if everyone could look at that. I know you've created things like class size, minimum and optimum and maximum ranges, and we were one of the first districts to do it before we modeled it before. So I just think we have been highly responsible, and will continue to be, while still providing an extraordinary education for our students, and that will remain our goal. You've heard from Superintendent Andrews and myself as far as our interest in wanting to continue the conversation, and it will remain the destiny of the boards to come along and see if that is a conversation they want to continue to explore and learn more about. But that's where we find ourselves now, and again, you probably don't hear it much, especially this time of year. Have really appreciated the work the House did this year to try and make something possible through a different structure.
It's called the Vicious Act Part 2.
For the board to know, just Linda mentioned the base education amount decreasing a little bit. Just so you know, I think that we might send an email out about it, but I think the impact for the homestead tax rate for Essex Junction is like going to be an increase of about 1.6 cents to the homestead tax rate as a result of changing that base education amount, just in case anybody asks.
So yeah, I sent that email out earlier. So it's about $16 on 100K.
$100,000 home.
Now, is that based on the 98-cent tax rate?
Yes.
The 98-cent tax rate,
Right.
which is what we already used,
Right.
but because of having to reduce the base education amount, that increases your district spending adjustment, which increases the tax rate.
So what we had proposed really was to increase the tax rate on people making under $90,000 a year in order to try to, you know, get that 2 cents in for the dollar amount. And that was hard because about 70% of the people in the village pay based on income. One of the proposals that we had was to extend that income slope up past the 90,000 up to about 150,000. And I think that that's something that will come. And it probably right out of the gate next year we'll be looking at doing that, because it's just, when you look at the percentage of income of what people are paying in property taxes as a percentage of income in that 90 to 150 range, it's unbelievable. It's
it goes from like
1.8
to like
right.
5.
Right, 5%. Yes, yes.
Like bam.
Right.
If you run out of the thing, and it's like the whole
and then over 150, it drops back down again. So you know, it's we were really trying to look at that. So there would have been, you know, probably a lot of complaints from people because their taxes would have gone up. just because we had to increase that income sensitivity rate. But what I would like to do, and I know we used to do this, is if I am elected again and I'm returned to the House, I would really love to be able to get together with you all in January. We used to do it every January, and somehow or another, the last few years, it's kind of fallen off the radar.
It was the lunch, right?
Yeah, legislative.
It was just a dessert. Yeah, yeah.
We just didn't do it last year. I thought we did it the year before.
I think it's been 2 years since we've done it. Anyway, it's important, I think, just for us to connect with you and to really understand what your priorities are, you know, very clearly, you know, so we can take that message back. I know that I would love to have a list of what you consider unfunded mandates, so that, you know, we can go in and talk about those things as we're talking about school district consolidation. Those are really important talking points to have. One of the things that we put into the teacher retirement adjustment, the adjustment for the healthcare benefits, was a floor amendment that after that $1,000, any other unfunded mandate has to go to appropriations for an additional appropriation into the education fund to cover that mandate. So we made that very clear, and that did pass both chambers. So we are also hoping that there's more sensitivity coming out of the Education Committee in terms of mandates that get passed on. And I know they have been substantial. And I'm not saying that a lot of them weren't good and that we should not have done them anyway. However, we have to understand that there has to be a way to pay for that. You can't just say, here, do this, and by the way, don't spend any money doing it. Or if you do, we're going to penalize you. So so that's kind of, you know, a little bit of what we did to try to, you know, put some skids on what's coming out of Montpelier in terms of mandates as well.
Well, we're certainly an anomaly in that, as you see decline in enrollment across the state, it's not true of this area at all.
Right.
We're holding steady and in fact increasing, and our population is becoming more diverse. And it's changing. Our demographics are changing as well. So our needs continue to grow. And we're cognizant of the need to be sustainable, but at the same time,
the social services that are delivered through schools are substantial. It's not just education anymore. We're feeding kids, we're doing medical interventions, dental interventions. It is substantial what is being done too.
And it's substantial the amount of local money we are putting through our school budgets for those needs as well. Surprisingly expensive. So, you know, as those needs increase, societal needs, you know, the students are just a microcosm. Our schools are a microcosm of the greater societal needs, and those continue to increase, even though the enrollment is decreasing in other places. That's not our experience. In fact, this year we had to add a 4th grade teacher because we were beyond maximum. So we're just in that uncomfortable place of being not, the relief isn't happening for us because of that. But we're also not experiencing the detriment of having a decline in enrollment.
The declines, I think, are sometimes even harder because you know, if you don't go down enough to lose a teacher, you're still in that really awful place of having to maintain your infrastructure without having the benefit of the students there.
And we have a district within our SU that's experiencing that. So all the way around, it's been a challenge.
So one of the things I think about a lot is the fact that, you know, we're a pretty small school district still by any outside measures. And, you know, we've got 4 small schools and 4 principals, and, you know, are there other models maybe from an administrative perspective that we should be talking about at the state level? Do we need a principal in each building? Is there, you know, a teacher leader model that maybe we should be looking at where, just throwing these ideas out. I'm not saying do them, but, you know, if these are things that you are thinking about and talking about, I would love to know so I can take that back to Montpelier, because you're going to need to have some kind of waiver from statute to do those kinds of things.
One thing, the one you mentioned just came up is if there's an area that has a lot of schools and could deal with less schools by increasing the size of one by a little bit. Like in our area, we've got the 4 schools, but we can't do anything because each one is maxed.
Right.
But now if we could get a $10 million school construction loan to do something huge at, say, Hiawatha, then we could close 2 schools maybe and just have 2 instead of 4.
Well, and that's been a conversation that I've heard a number of reps talk about, the fact that, you know, you have 5 schools, you know, if the state's willing to put its money where its mouth is and actually build a large school that's energy efficient, that's designed for 21st century learning, and that will accommodate the students from all those 5 schools, and the transportation burden is not significant, the state should think about including that in their bonding. I mean, we left $40 million on the table in bonding capacity this year. So, you know,
it might be good to, instead of every single district in the state trying to come up with this and the steps of how to go through it.
Right.
It'd be neat if there was like a person assigned that could go around and solve all those problems for you. You know, come into here and tell our board, if you wanted to do this, these are the steps you'd follow, instead of somebody like me trying to figure it out on my own, you know. I don't know if that would be a possibility.
We had consultants that we hired during the last study. Yeah. And, you know, there are people, it was in the bill actually, that there was going to be a team.
Design team.
To help with that body of work. The house, you really did create a wonderful opportunity to do it differently. But we keep trying to use these, you know, 20th century structures.
19th century.
19th century structures and these 1950 buildings.
Right.
But I mean, I totally agree, but I mean, is at the state level, is that being researched, right? I mean, there's evidence out there of complete consolidation, right? I mean, Hawaii has 1 school district.
Right.
It has 5 islands.
Right.
But when I check their budgets, it's the same as ours. It's like 1.5 billion. Albuquerque, New Mexico, 90,000 students, 1 school district because it's in 1 city. It's also geographically consolidated. That must mean that they're more efficient because it's only in 1 city, right? Their budget's 2.5 billion. So I mean, I just found it, right? I don't know, but is there evidence that it actually works? Can it work? Does it work with our geography? I mean, I hear a lot of this is what we have to do because I think it's sort of this idea of, well, you just take what you have now and it's this much money and you cut out some stuff by squishing it together and it becomes this lower number. But I'm not clear that that actually is like the reality. And so are we actually researching the similar situation with the new model that these new kinds of models we're talking about to show that, look, it's actually better. Lower taxes, better, right? So, you know, more efficient, better education. I haven't seen any evidence of that presented.
That was not part of the bill because that was not why they did it. They did the bill for efficiency in terms of staff deployment, in terms of administrative oversight. It was not about saving money. And they made that very clear with the consolidation plan was not about saving money. They figured there would be some money. But even if you eliminated all the superintendents in the state of Vermont, if you eliminated every single one for whatever reason, it's $4 or $5 million. I mean, it's not it's like half a penny on the tax rate. It's not a, you know, it's not a huge number right there. What they were looking at were things like in really tiny districts, you get 1 high needs kid into a school of 45 and suddenly the budget is 2 or 3 times what it was without, you know, any, you get a little bit of federal money, but you know, the rest of it's coming locally.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? If you can somehow or another, if you have larger districts, you can absorb those costs. You have experts already who can help deliver services to kids, speech language services. You know, they're all kinds.
The rest of Vermont, not us.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, that consolidation was absolutely. the consolidation
We're
study
doing
that we did not articulate the savings for much the same reason that they didn't go into that in that consolidation plan.
Right.
It was really about efficiencies, ensuring services, and doesn't make sense to take elementary school from the fort and put them on a bus and drive them by 4 elementary schools to the other side of town.
Right.
And, you know, we said we would hold all the districts the way they were, but at some point within the first 5 years, we were going to be redrawing those circles
right, yeah.
and readjusting, you know, where kids went. It made sense to do that. And, you know, but I have talked to a number of reps who are also interested in the state stepping in and doing more bonding and saying, you know, if you will consolidate, you know, here's a pot of money and we may not pay for all of it, but we will pay for a big chunk of it. So, you know, I think this community looked at Hiawatha as a potential for, you know, a larger school. I don't think it flew here. I think it was, you know, nobody could really see the benefit.
Right.
You know, from doing that. So,
versus
you
the
know,
cost.
Right, because there's been no bonding. There's been no state money available to do that. I think the high school, you know, the skating rink and the tech center was probably about the last of the bonding that went through. Yeah.
2006.
Right.
This board actually had a study done through NASDAQ of looking at space. And at the time, it's because there was a moratorium on any new construction, they didn't find it feasible or affordable.
I didn't think the study was done that well either when I read it. I don't know if you read it, Linda. I was disappointed.
I think it came to the
with
board
who was
after
hired.
I left.
I don't know if it was the organization that was hired or how, but there was a lot of things missing in that study. I almost think a community committee, you know, a space committee, can almost study it better and in more depth than someone walking into our community from the outside. So we've got such talented people in this district.
We do. And some of them are going to soon be unemployed thanks to, you know, exit of our great business partner here. So, you know.
Yeah.
Question, because of this conversation, Mike.
Communications, because of the changes that are happening and how budgets might be affected or tax rates when they come out in July. Should we be proactive and Judy and Grant do an article in the Essex Reporter or get things out in the newsletter or on porch forums? I think I'd rather get ahead of this than come in behind it, because we gave out figures that we thought it would be. People are going to say, what happened? You guys blew it, you know? So I'm just thinking how we can be proactive.
Well, this will be in my wrap-up of the session in the Essex Reporter. I don't know how many people read that, but I will do that. Tim's up next, so his will be in this Thursday's edition, and I'll be in the following week's edition. So, I mean, they're always...
We'll have to say the numbers from Grant on...
Right.
You know, we know we told you this. What it's actually going to be is this, based on what
this is
came
what
out.
passed. And there are always little adjustments.
Right.
I mean, you know, Burlington budget doesn't pass. I mean, that's a huge chunk of the state spending right there. And, you know, that can affect the ultimate tax rate. So.
Right. And if it makes more sense to come from me, I'll write it, but I'll just have to get the input for the actual numbers.
I think we should be proactive. I think if it comes from the board chairs or from the school districts, I think when people read about their schools or how their taxes are impacted locally, I think it's just so generic how things are explained, I know, until we sit here and talk about Act 60. This is very complex, and I think it's got to be put in very simple terms so that everybody can understand it, that picks up and reads on Porch Forum or in the paper.
There was a frustration because there was different numbers in the book. There was different numbers that we were presenting, and that we were talking above people, so I think that makes complete sense.
Yeah, we've already got people upset with us. They're going to be upset again. I mean...
Why are they going to be upset? They voted on a budget number.
Right.
They didn't vote on a tax rate.
They didn't vote on a tax rate.
So that's up to us to fit the tax rate into the budget. That's
But we try to translate to them
what is
what
gonna
the
be.
tax
Oh, right. Okay.
rate's
So
gonna
they
be as
right,
the
right.
impact
Well,
of
by
this
telling
budget.
them, I'm almost like you're trying to incite a reaction when there really shouldn't be one because
No.
their budget's
It's
still the
just
same.
more informing.
Okay.
Right.
I
Here's
want to make
what
sure
it
it's worded
means.
such
We
that
want to make sure
this
to
doesn't affect
tell
your
you.
tax rate at all.
Right. We want to make sure to tell you.
Right.
You
Yeah, I
know.
think that
So-
when people get a tax bill, since the base rate didn't change, they might be expecting it to be what we estimated with the
Right.
tax
Right.
grids, and all of a sudden, I don't think people know, because it's a complicated calculation.
Right.
People
Right.
might hear, oh, the base
Bring that.
education amount went down, they're not gonna know, well, that means
That
my
means your
tax rate
taxes
is
go up.
And guess who gets the complaints about taxes? The village clerk
Yes.
and the
They send
town
them out.
clerk. So it might behoove some conversation with the village trustees. Hey, be prepared. When the tax bills go out, you're probably going to get some complaints. This is why. Because people do go to them asking them to do something about the school budgets and things and why was the tax bill so high.
So the fact that we've left about 70% of the people in the village at the 1.8, I think is probably going to do something to, not be so bad. Because we were looking at 1.94, I think.
Right.
So for that, that group.
So it's 1.94 after this year.
Okay, right.
Is that?
Right, but what we had proposed was the 1.9. We took it back to 1.8. So that's good news for 70% of people. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Although that, I think another one of the complications of the
It
tax
still go-
rate is the household income percentage is kind of a year delayed.
Yes.
So that 1.8 really is going to impact tax rates for FY16. Sorry, I know it's.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're paying based on last year's.
Yeah.
Income. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you send us, I think the only numbers that change are up in this upper right hand. So are you going to send us, can you send
There was
us
only
an
one.
updated?
There was only one, I believe, that actually changed, which was the.
So 1.9 goes to 1.8 and then 9,382 goes to 9,285. I did it right.
Yep.
Those two.
Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, we don't
Wait,
even
this
have
other
finals,
stuff doesn't
honestly.
change because
No,
this is
yeah.
like actual
Right.
sources
Right,
and,
that was
and
the
uses
recent,
numbers. That's the same numbers.
This is this came,
Yeah.
Right,
these
so-
are grants figures that came from Brad James that I sent out. I sent you an email with the
You did.
updated.
You might just not have gotten it yet.
Oh,
Grant.
okay, yeah, I just probably didn't see it yet.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
grant.
so it already went out.
Yeah, I
Okay,
forwarded
great.
it to you.
Yeah.
And
Yep,
that was
you're
just
on
the
this list.
conference. Linda, you don't see any issues with the full House and full Senate passing these? You think it's good? The House and Senate will both pass and.
It's done.
the governor to-
Yeah, this is
Oh,
this is the conference committee report, and so once
Oh,
it
doesn't
comes.
have to go back to the House for another vote now?
We're done, yeah.
Oh, okay.
We all voted, yeah, but it's an up or down vote, you can't change it at that point.
So, and you expect the governor to sign?
Yeah, because it's the entire tax package, including his $4.5 million for economic development, so it's the entire tax package
So
that
whatever we
got
say
pulled
this
into
time
this.
will be the final one.
This
No,
is the
actually, you know
final.
what? No, it's not. It's not because it uses approved budgets in the 35 school districts that failed. So their numbers, it's like what you said. If Burlington keeps having to change theirs and lower it, there's some impact from that.
Right, but that'll go into
feeding back
reserves,
in.
that's not gonna.
Oh, okay, it goes into reserves.
Okay, so
Because
so this time we're done.
Got it.
We have run
Next
our
year.
reserves down to a dangerous level in the
Right.
end fund.
Okay.
We truly
Got it.
have.
Okay.
So
So
if
you
if
just
there are
run these
savings in that,
numbers,
it
and then if
will.
there's extra, it goes in the
No,
reserve, and
it'll
it comes back
waterfall
in
right
later.
down in.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
So we lost
That's good to
the
know.
small school grants.
Right.
That was unfortunately taken out in conference committee. The other thing that we did was we said we get renters rebate in the House. However, we felt that that was a subsidy that needed to be paid for out of a housing section of the budget, that it should not come out of the education fund. There's some of us like me who believe that current use should come out of another area of the budget, should not come out of the ed fund. Those are things that some of us are trying to purify, this fund. I mean, I understand the renter rebate is wildly popular. However, it is a housing subsidy. And So the House voted to change the percentage of allowable, it's what's called allocable rent. We dropped it 2 percentage points. That was also taken out in the conference committee. So all these things that we thought we were doing to try to help adjust the tax rate got shoved back in. We also set an income sensitivity cap at 6,000, except for people over the age of 65, where we put it at 8,000. That got taken out in the conference committee report. And you know, the thing, I know it probably doesn't mean a lot here, but we hear from town clerks who will come in and they're just crazy, and they'll say, oh, this person, you know, they have 100 acres, they drive brand new Mercedes, and they come in and they pay income sensitivity because all their money is sheltered, and so it's not included in the income calculation for households. And so we've tried to deal with these things over the years, and so the cap was one of those, the house site cap, and the amount that you can, that's eligible for income sensitivity. Being capped were a couple of those things, and they were taken out on the Senate side in the conference committee. So unfortunately, we did not make as much progress as I'd hoped to make, but we're back at it next year. And
it seems like those are such common sense things to fix.
I know.
Who are these senators and what are they doing?
Well, sometimes you have to say things twice, or 3 times,
or
before
for a decade.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, or 10 years.
But certainly, it's
or why rental subsidies is coming out of
the ed
education.
fund. Yeah,
right.
It doesn't even make sense. I mean,
well, you can see, you know, if you look at.
But then you could go into, why does the purchase and use tax go into it?
Yeah.
You got to be careful, right? Like, because when
Right.
you look down the sources
Right.
of money,
Right.
it's not like it's all from taxes.
It's the lottery money, the
so you start picking on one side, and then you got to go on
Right.
the other side and say, well, then let's not
It's
pay
all
for
one
it
bucket
with
of
this.
money.
It's all one
Yeah.
bucket of money.
right. But sometimes it seems like
just have layers.
You're right.
It is, but it's, you know.
Sales and use, purchase and use.
Yep.
I mean, there's a lot of sources. Right, we're trying to divide it up across
Oh, yeah,
a lot of different people.
That's on the
Well,
taxes.
right. I mean, it used to be all general fund, and then after Act 60, it became, you know, combination of, you know,
Right.
a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There's a little bit of the gas tax that goes into this. I mean, it's really, you know, tried to purify the transportation fund. The other thing that I've been trying to call attention to is the fact that when they do the transportation fund, they have the policy and they have the money all in one committee, and so the decisions are made for all of the allocations right at that point. And they have to do allocations out to towns. So it's not very different from what we're doing in the ed fund, except that the policy and the revenue source is completely separated, and it's really been a problem. There's been a real disconnect. And
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for coming to speak with us, and
This was great.
I'm very happy for the things that the House proposed. Hopefully, they will propose very similar things again next year, and
first year in the biennium is when you really want to do
Yeah.
those big things. They just often take that
Amount of
year
time.
or even into the second year to work through both chambers and through the governor's staff as well. Although
Right.
the governor was very supportive of this, but a lot of us saw this coming. Just timing wise, we knew that it was way too late.
Right.
And we were hoping that the Senate might take at least a few pieces of what we
of
did
it, yeah.
and try to salvage it, but they had a very, very different approach. So we have, if you include Senator Mazza, we've got, 7 senators for, Chittenden County. So I think it's important that we keep in touch with them and let them know how we feel about this. And that, they need to try to push from their end. Senator Ash is chair of the Finance Committee, and that's where this whole thing, got hashed out with the education funding. So
all right.
stay in touch with them.
Great.
So.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. Be in touch. See you
Yes.
around. Tell them
Yeah.
I'm back.
Get some rest. Yeah.
November? This November?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so let's have an update on the climate survey.
So the climate survey results, you could click on them for the individual school results in your org notes. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. They look pretty similar to last year.
They do. We're very pleased. What I'm handing out, and Ben already sent you a email with these results. These are the district-wide results. Okay. So this compares your scores. So you'll have an opportunity to see across the schools how they compare. So your principals just received these results 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they don't have any in-service time to really do the analysis right now, but that's what they're looking at right now. They're doing a comparison between these results, their action plans, what they want to continue doing in their action plans or adjust to continue to improve these results. I will say the results are exceptional. From a national perspective, the people who conduct the survey tell us that these are astounding results to have. We have only one area, and it's not an area that is deficient by any means, but it's one of our lower areas, still in the range that's acceptable, and that's the social-emotional component. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again, I think it reflects, it's students and teachers. I think it reflects, the society at large. That's an area that we're going to continue to look at and focus on, but take some time to review this data, because I think it'll be informative when the principals provide their report at your June meeting.
I think it's important to mention too, the Hiawatha and Summit, only the 3rd graders are taking this.
That's right. It's a 3 through 8.
Thanks, I forgot about that.
That's a good point, because you only had 1 grade level in those places.
One of the
That's
things
why the
I
numbers are
noticed.
low. Yeah, you see it in the numbers.
Right. Yeah, you do.
Right, 60
The
kids, 60
older,
students.
yeah, the
60-ish.
more you survey, the lower the.
When I was perusing what Ben sent us, and I haven't gone over it in detail, but what was interesting is when the students are taking the surveys, 5th grade and 8th grade seem to have a drop of that. I don't know if it's the safety security piece, but there was one of those, keep an eye on it. And it's 5th and 8th grade, and I remember back when my son was here, I can remember talking with principals, and they have a lot of changes that kids go through when they turn 10 years old, then when they turn 13. So I wonder how much those results, when we look at those grade levels like that, I think there needs to be an explanation that some of that could be the, I don't want to use that hormonal factors, but it's the changes, developmental changes. So that was fascinating.
So this is, it's compiled by NCC?
Yes.
Like they actually do the analysis and generate it for, I mean, we hired them to do it.
Right.
Basically.
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
the
right,
SU
so that way
board
it's.
does.
Right,
The SU board
yeah, because
pays
it's
for
SU-wide.
this.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then this is like, they generate the report for us, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like a nice independent analysis.
Right.
And they're doing this for other
Across
schools and
the
districts
nation.
across the nation as well.
So
right?
they-
So that way it's kind of a common analysis.
Right, and they can really give you a sense of what our scores mean when they look across the nation. And
Okay, that's great.
I think we're the only system in the state of Vermont currently using this climate survey.
Oh, wow.
So we
Great.
can't really compare
Right,
within
the state.
the state, but we surely can beyond. And most of our scores are at a 4.0, which is really outstanding. And those that dip a little below are typically in that social emotional security area.
Do they provide a comparison with school districts of similar size?
We haven't.
I don't remember.
I'm sure they do anything we want them to do at a cost.
No, okay. I just couldn't remember if that was one, because that's the only other comparison we can.
And at the SU
really
board
generate.
level, when we start to look at these results, that that's a question about do we want to see the data in another way, more additional data with the results. Next year is the last year. This is your second year. The board. The SU board made a decision to administer this particular survey for 3 consecutive years. So this is year 2.
Right.
We did change the time of the administration from the fall to the spring, and I think that that change affected our participation a little bit.
Positively or negatively?
In some places it was positive, and in some places it was negative. Especially at the high school level, it's spring, and it's busy, busy, busy time, and so it was more difficult. It's more difficult when you don't have self-contained grades, too. So the older the students get, the more difficult it is to get that participation. But overall, our participation was healthy, and we will continue again in the spring of next year, which will be more of an apples-to-apples comparison. Right. I hope we don't get fatigue, survey fatigue from doing it. I hope that we can continue to demonstrate that the changes that we make in our action plan are having the results based on the input that parents and students and teachers are providing us, and they see it as valuable. That's the long-term goal. And then after next year, we'll administer every other year.
And maybe there needs to be a discussion at some point of, how it's being put out. There are ways to take it to make it easier. I think Ben sending out the link, I think he did it over Front Porch Forum, was very easy to just click and go right to it. I know some schools have just had the laptops out during conferences, so you could just sit there and do it real quick. So ease of taking it, maybe some ways of
those are great points, Jen, because those when we were seeing why our elementary schools had a better participation rate, principals were right there at the table saying, well, we had our computers available during student-led conferences, and they just had access.
Right.
So those are good points, and for the high school to think about capturing some of those opportunities as well.
If the public wants to read this report that just was given to us, is it going to be a website they can go to, or is it clicking on to each individual school? 'Cause
right now it's clicking on to each individual school.
And that will pull up the same report.
So what you received in your org notes was each individual school's results. Okay. This school district report just came out like 2 or 3 days ago. I wasn't sure. I guess I'll ask the board your input for. Certainly, we want to make it available to your principals and to the board. If you think the school comparison, we didn't put it up last year, would be helpful. We could. I think parents are more interested in
where
their particular school versus a comparison. I think the board.
I think I think the biggest thing is just the more simpler thing of how do we as a board basically simplify and summarize that, this 20 pages into like what's the key points, and then we just communicate that out, because that's really saying, and we could provide.
You provide the reference to this.
You can provide a link to it if you want, but basically it's all in the individual reports also. So we could just kind of summarize the key because it looks like it's pretty consistent.
It is very
It's very consistent. So we don't have a lot to explain that we have this thing happening over here and this thing happening over here. It looks like it's really there's one consistent thing that we could summarize.
Yes.
so that shouldn't be too hard. It seems
Right.
like that's mostly what we would want to do, and then just say, because I always think it's important when people take surveys that then they can see, and even if we're putting it out publicly, even
Right.
then people who didn't take the survey this time see that, oh yeah, they actually did something with that.
Right.
Right? They got the results. Here's the results. Oh, and here's what we're doing with it.
Right.
So, maybe we have to be able to do that all at once, we might need to be able to wait a little to see how it's in the school action plans. I mean, we kind of have them now.
So it's you'll see
Right.
it there, but you're right, that just overarching statements like from the 12 dimensions of school climate measured, we were at or above standard and all, and actually you were still at standard in the social and emotional component. So you're trending in a very positive means, but that is the one area that trends across. Just speaking about some of the trends that you can easily pick out of here, but the results are really very, very positive. And
when you go on the CCSU website, usually you do some caption things, so that's where that could.
Oh, like a banner?
Yeah. Like the results
Or even a
of
press release,
climate,
actually.
and just generalize it, like you said. I think it's a great idea, Tim.
Yeah.
Because I may not, as an individual in the community, I may not want to be interested in the graphs and looking at this and that, but I think a synopsis of exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I could do the same. I mean, that feels like something like I could send out, like on Front Porch Forum, like I did before. So I mean, I could take a crack at just boiling it down, run it by everybody, make sure I hit the high points.
Right.
And then they can access the links.
Right, and then
if you want the more specific data or whatever, here's where this.
Yeah, communicating the results is really important.
Yep.
Right. So I mean, I'll take a crack at doing a little summary, short paragraph, whatever it is, to try to hit the high things.
Definitely thanking people for their
Yeah, right.
participation
Yeah, exactly.
and how valuable that is.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
Because it's good to know if things are going well, even if you know
That's
what I mean.
right.
Like people still think it's going well, or
I think it validated a lot of the professional development activities that have been happening with responsive design, responsive classroom, mindfulness training. I think principals were really attaching it to a lot of the professional development work that they've been doing.
Right. So, and the only other thing I got for the board is looks like is kind of like in our place is sort of like communicating with the parents, and so at least doing our part to encourage parents to participate. Because okay, it was pretty good, and I mean for our 4 schools, I think we were kind of in, but maybe we were a little to the low, target participation rate, right? Just taking their from NCCs, kind of like, okay, what would we like to have? But yeah, the more the better. I mean, I think the message seems to be pretty consistent, so it doesn't seem that we're really lacking. We've got a good idea of what the
Is
what the
this
feeling
something like what the communications committee would work on, like if they know the survey's coming up next spring, could they be putting out things on the porch forum and in the paper, letting people know that is available?
We do a lot of it.
You do that?
I think that there was quite a bit, but I think it also came out of the superintendent's office. I think it's always good when a board,
so it is out there.
and when a board member though.
Well, the principals also put it in their weekly
Yeah.
synopsis with the link as
Right,
well.
out to
And
the
they
parents
always
and
follow
stuff,
up with
right.
parents and have meetings at schools if they want to discuss
They did a
the
lot
climate.
of work
Right.
to encourage participation.
Right.
And I think the most important thing when you share the results is to say that even our lower scores are still very positive.
Right.
And to the point Marla was making, on page 7 it talks about how a lower score in a certain dimension is typical for an age range as far as when lessons are taught as well. So, capturing it, the language is all there. I think penned by a board member is more powerful sometimes. especially since this has been a board requirement.
Mm-hmm.
SU board.
Right, yeah.
Directive. But great results. I'm thrilled to see the level of improvement.
Well, great. So, Tim, you're going to taking a stab at writing up a little summary?
Yeah, I'll try to make a summary that I
Okay.
included in a little update from our, and this is probably one of the big things from this meeting. So, the other thing being Linda's update.
Yeah,
Right.
legislative
I think
updates.
that's
It's
what we talked
very
about,
big.
like trying to,
Yeah.
somehow.
So I'm going to tackle that.
Yeah, maybe if you can tackle that part of it in terms of, because then there's this like specific numbers.
Some outcomes of the meeting
influence
and stuff,
because of
yep.
that,
Yep.
right?
And from that, it's just, I would just add that I think we went early into planning day, but when you start to hear about some of the legislative concerns there are, it's important to make time.
I wanted to ask
Made a
that.
note about that.
I mean, ask ourselves that question. So, if we think about kind of basically reopening the consolidation discussion as a way to kind of say it, it's really the SU board, right? It can't come from us.
Correct.
Realistically, because what we would be consolidating is like SU plus other stuff, or a piece of the SU Westford might be leaving and Essex Town might be coming in. Like, it's not our board consolidating with, so it's okay. We're reps to the SU board, so I know it's going to come. It's all going to come back around, but really that has to be driven out of the SU board, right?
Right.
Because if the SU doesn't want to do it, then we don't. Then the big we doesn't want to do it.
So it's really important that this board have the conversation, though, so the reps that attend the SU board member have direction.
Right. So yeah, not knowing. I mean, when's the SU meeting? I can't remember.
May 27th.
Is it 27th?
27.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 weeks.
Right. Okay. Good. I'm back.
Yeah.
So if it wouldn't, if it would or wouldn't come up, I guess that would be the only thing that we would,
It'll be on the agenda.
It'll be on the agenda probably.
Legislative updates and next steps will be on the agenda.
So I guess that's the only thing to let us know how people are, what people are thinking, or if we want to talk about it.
If Martha is there, she gives a legislative update at the CCSU meetings, which is valuable. It's valuable having her point of view there.
Right, right. No, I guess what I mean is, basically, I think it's that question of someone's gonna, who's the chair? Are you the chair now? Right, the chair's gonna ask, are the boards interested in entertaining this discussion of doing this work? And so that's kind of the thing. We would need to know what to answer for our board.
Correct.
Do we think it's a good idea? Do we think it's a, in very general terms at this point, I think, right? Like, do we think, or are we sitting at a place where we really want to go poll the community? We really want to go out and talk to our neighbors in the community and kind of ask around a little bit and get the feel. And then we would say if we're...
Well, I surely think once you start telling them a 5 to 6 cent increase is anticipated again next year.
Right. Well, actually, the big thing was the piece that Grant talked about, that the high school is already going to be hitting up against the
threshold.
The threshold.
Excess spending threshold is really going to have an impact.
I'm curious where Westford already had one budget defeat. They did get it to pass with another one. I mean, it wasn't by, 11 votes? So I think we're all going to be faced next year with going out to the public and trying to get the budgets passed. It's going to get more difficult. So.
Right.
But we know that the whole
I'd
consolidation
be curious
opens a whole other
where
set of factors, right? That
Correct.
is just, are we really gonna go there? That's
I'd
the
be
question.
curious how Town of Essex stacks up with are they going to be close to excess threshold spending? I'd be curious how this affects their budgeting, their budget numbers they put out.
Well, what happens to the high school is going to affect both of you.
Right.
That's true.
So they might be affected in the same way you are affected. So I just, Linda's going to go and attend the U46 board meeting next Monday, so they'll have the conversation. And Martha's going to be at the SU board meeting. So, you know, we're really fortunate to have reps that are closely connected to our schools and who really want our input and help us understand why things have ended up the way they are. So we're fortunate to be in a position to have the conversations that are informative to help us in turn have those conversations with our community. Tease.
You know, the other thing I think we're very fortunate to have is Grant.
Oh, yeah.
He makes it very understandable. He uses language that can be understood. And I just thank God all the time for his abilities and what he brings to the boards.
He's an amazing asset, and we almost lost him. So, you know, talent is recruited frequently. We are fortunate. I think one only needs to look at the turnover that our neighboring district had to see what happens with finances when you don't have the stability of people who are in those positions for a long period of time and understand.
I think for Tim's info, we've almost lost Grant twice now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's being recruited by other districts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I would like to move on to the consent agenda. Marla had noted that the we had already approved the minutes from March 19th.
Right.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
We approved them at our April meeting.
At the April meeting, yep.
So the only change I see is pulling the 3/19/14 minutes off the consent agenda.
Correct.
Already done.
Right. So I would need a motion to approve everything else.
I will move that we approve the consent agenda with the following items. The approval of warrants, the approval of meeting minutes of April 10th and May 5th, 2014, and that we appoint Lynette Corbin as the Essex Junction School District Clerk and Treasurer.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? The only thing would be is that it's actually May 1st. Not May 5th.
I thought I said May 1st. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Who seconded?
I did.
Dave did.
Dave
I just have one
did.
question.
Okay.
I thought Marla was our clerk, so why is...
She's the board clerk.
Right. Oh, okay, right. Okay. That's
school district
clerk.
clerk.
Okay.
Right.
That's right. Okay. Okay. I'm sitting like, you know what, a clerk?
It's all kinds of clerks.
All right.
A lot of clerks.
Lots of
A
roles.
lot of right minutes.
All right.
Lots of complexity.
Yeah.
As I guess all those in favor of the motion as amended to say 5-5 instead of 5-1 for the meeting minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. All right, future agenda items, which we've talked.
I think we have plenty.
We've identified.
Oh.
Final assembly presentation of apples. We have 3 science teachers retiring at ADO.
Right. That was the thing. I had the list from. We got a list from Ben of folks that are being replaced. You know.
Right.
I didn't know how many were retirements versus. You know, of course, I'm not going to find the list.
I'll take care of it. Yeah.
And just so.
I'll make sure you have what you need.
Okay.
And then you want to know about where the recognition might be happening, so board members can.
That's exactly it.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you, Jen, for remembering.
The only other question I have is because of universal pre-K, the money that we put into the child care resource survey that Erin was going to be working on, when is she starting that, or has that already begun? And if so, would we want an update at the meeting?
Yeah, for our June meeting, I'll have Erin attend, or at least provide information with the early ed money. I know, I remember her coming to one of our meetings and talking about if universal pre-K passed, routing something differently.
Right,
Remember?
I was going to say, because I think there's
Yes.
about 15,000 we discussed putting into
Yes.
this, and if that passed, I'm not sure if we still need to.
And that could be a simple update too.
Right.
Yep.
And I just
Okay.
don't remember the answer either.
Yeah. I'll get that information for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then we had other items that we already mentioned, school safety.
School safety won't be ready for our June meeting, though, I don't think.
Well,
No, I think we just talked about it, discuss it.
yeah, just have it as
Well, you'll have your planning day agenda.
right. The planning day agenda will be available.
Right.
So I did have one that was, I mean, I just wanted to make sure,
Mhm.
you know, what the board thinks in terms of leading. I sent some questions back about the school action plans through Michael to you, Judy. But I think I just want to make sure, because I know sometimes it can be like one. Well, let's try to get the board on the same page in terms of. So my concern was that we have the new action plans, and it could be this is all going to get covered. But what I was hoping for, or what I think is a good idea, is that there's kind of a readout of the last action plan. That's like, what were the results? We did a 2-year action plan, and now we're going to do another 2 years. So it's a great time. I mean, it seems really to make sense to be like, okay, so yeah, so how did it go? You know, there's very great stuff in there with, here's the actions we're going to do, which is now over the last 2 years. So then there's kind of a simple, did we do them? You know, yes, 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 yes. And then there's a thing of, what was the metric? You know, oh well, how did it turn out? How did we do? And then obviously that's been reviewed and it has informed how we created the new ones. But like, it's hard to. I think for the board to review the new one without having that, you know.
So typically the EJ principals get together and they provide a PowerPoint in June that you're all familiar with. That they provide for you in June on their school action plans. And they talk about their accomplishments there. So there'll be a page of accomplishments and the data and how they use that information, just like what you're requesting, kind of the closeout of that 2-year action plan, what gets carried over, some of the targets met, some of the targets that they'll continue with.
Right.
So that comes through the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, that's like leading into
the action plans that
the
you're
new
getting to
ones
see.
or
So
whatever.
you'll be able to make those connections
Right.
because you'll have read all the action plans.
Yep.
Right.
I think it was last year's PowerPoint that I got a lot out of. So I'm not sure if there's a way of looking at their PowerPoint. I'm not sure I kept that literature, but I can remember thinking at the time they went through it that it was very well done because they did lay it out that way.
Okay, great, right. I mean, that's
And you can certainly ask them a question too. You know.
Right. I can see if I can, I think it's Principal Wojciechowski that puts that together. I think I can ask him for the 2013 PowerPoint if I don't have it already, and I can have that sent out to you, either clicked into the org so you could see it in advance, so that when you see the new one, would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think Suzanne will be there with Mary, I take it. All our principals will be there, and Suzanne will be joining Mary, maybe? Okay.
Yeah, that's part of the transition plan we're putting together.
Do we have an agenda for the carousel meeting?
No, but I've been starting to think about maybe that's the time after tonight's meeting. I'm inclined to have a conversation with my administrative team tomorrow about maybe that's the time when all 16 board members are together to have the MTSS, the multi-tiered system of support framework presented, like the it's going to be in everybody's. It'll at least be the overarching, so that if you do need to delve further in at your planning day opportunities, you'll have that at least overarching perspective. Our leadership team has spent a year
Right.
working on it. Every meeting it's been its focus, so it's a body of work.
That makes sense.
That is the next meeting, right?
And that is the next meeting, so.
We do like carousel and then we break
Carousel
out.
on the MTSS.
At the carousel meeting too, the CCSU should have voted on and come up with the annual work plan.
Correct.
So I'm assuming you will share that with all 16 members
Okay.
at the same time. It's a good updating.
So I
What
was
day is that?
thinking, it's
June
June 9th, I
Is that right?
believe.
Monday, June 9th.
Yeah, June
6.
9th, 6:30,
6:30.
high school, EHS.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's gonna be, the task of, the board members that sit on leaders at work or, the SU board members. I don't know if there's gonna be time to do both and then see all of your action plans the same night, so it might have to go
Yeah,
into
it may
individual
not.
board meetings
Yeah.
time. But it's an important piece of work too.
Sure.
Usually we have an SU board update in your individual local boards.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that might be the time to,
Well,
Yeah.
I had late last time, I remember it was on the last day of school, so the poor principals were coming then to report their action plans.
Yeah.
we improved.
Yeah.
Right. All right, so does anybody have anything else? All right, well then at 6:12 Central Time, we're adjourned.